What else? Warriors this week. What do you say?
Well, I kind of like the Golden State Warriors right now. A bit banged up. Got some guys out. Feel a little bit underneath the weather, but I appreciate you putting me on your back today, Dave.
Well, I typically do. The thing's getting a little sore after all this time.
All righty.
But let's get into...
got my tea and honey. I'm ready to rock, man.
The pipes are everything, so you got to take care of those, man.
It's good to see you, by the way.
You overwork yourself, and you have to... Actually, quite frankly, though, well, some like you have a sort of the deep chords. You have a deep voice to begin with. But a lot of people, sometimes when they get to that raspy voice and they feel as though they need to shut it down, like John Facenda back in the day. We'll get into Warriors this week. My apologies, but we're going to just bear with me.
I need more on John Facenda.
We go down this rabbit hole for a moment to start things. John Facenda, who is the voice of NFL films.
Yeah, that's right.
The Raiders, they called it a dance. Anyways, John Facenda. He used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. He was a long-time Philadelphia newsman. And a lot of people, just when they get to that raspy sort of like they feel as though they haven't slept in 3 days, that's actually sort of the voice that they're trying to obtain.
Well, that's why it feels like a lot of those old-timey guys, like those are the classic broadcasters because I don't know if it's American Spirits or Marlboros, whatever their poison was. It literally sounded like they jumped on the mic right after ripping a heater.
Oh, that's the way it was.
And I mean, I feel like that's just how it goes. Nowadays, it's frowned upon. And I don't know, maybe we've lost a little bit of that baritone as a result.
No doubt. Really quick,
If you want to get into play-by-play, just smoke more cigarettes.
Last thing I have to add, I did a show in New York once, just a one-off, and I was doing a sportscast for the ABC affiliate in New York City.
This wasn't the one at MetLife Stadium.
No. That's WWE.
That's
Let's read the NFL. So this is at KABC in New York, or WABC in New York, and I sat down in my at the desk, right, and I'm ready to do sports. A little nervous, first time I've gone in front of the Big Apple. And as I look below me, I see that there's a little built-in shelf underneath my desk where this quote-unquote sports desk is. Like the anchor's to my left, the weatherman's to their left. And so afterwards, I said, hey, this is kind of unusual. What is that? And they said, yeah, that will always be there. And it's been there since the beginning of time. That little shelf that you see under your desk, that was for Warner Wolf, who back in the day would keep a martini at all times sitting at the ready, which he would drink in between breaks or at the commercial. And we're never going to, it's sort of this iconic, almost like it belongs in the Smithsonian. I'm like, oh, that's a beautiful thing.
Well, that reminds me of one of my favorite shows, Mad Men, where it feels like every single day they're walking in with just something to put in their cup. Because
happy hour was like at 3:30 in the afternoon constantly.
It's all they did. And the whole show's about the dialogue that happens during these conversations about big business and suited and booted type of affairs in New York City. And then they walk in every single morning, and the assistants got their cup of coffee and a water with some spritzer because got to get ready and go back do it again.
All right, from Mad Men to the Mad Dutchman. All right, let's just get into this thing.
Yeah. What do you got, Dan? What do you got?
Well, no, Quinton Post. First of all, let's give him his flowers. What a performance! And big win for the Golden State Warriors. They're all big at this point.
Yeah.
They take care of Chicago after getting down, not looking good after a quarter, after a half. I want to say they were trailing at the half. And then unlike the night before, because that was a back-to-back, and they just did not have their sea legs in that first half. But unlike the third quarter the night before in Sacramento, a completely different story with the bench this time around, where they just ran Chicago out of the gym. And it was anchored by Quinton Post, the rookie out of Boston College, at 7'1" from the Netherlands. It was anchored by... Let's not leave Guy Santos out of the headlines as well. But
the second unit.
But just sort of your thoughts on what went down, and or is this another one of those games that we point at and said, hey, this could be the launching pad going forward in terms of good things about to happen to the Golden State Warriors?
Well, I think it indicates a couple things. Like it highlights what they've been missing, and you can see why they wanted to go out and court a Lauri Markkanen, or why Vucevic, who didn't perform that well, but that kind of player is something that absolutely, it almost feels necessary for this team at this point because they don't have enough perimeter shooting. Quinton Post, he shot 10 times in 14 minutes. Like, the Bulls were not guarding him whatsoever. And he just made everybody's job that much easier. So the fact that they were able to put a shooter out on the three-point line who's 7 feet tall, it makes sense why they've been going after this kind of player for so long. And I don't know if Quinton Post is necessarily the guy who's just going to, like, all of a sudden take over and become that three-point marksman, but he absolutely adds a dynamic they haven't had. And at a point where Draymond's been hurt, Kuminga's hurt, Pods just came back after missing 12 games. I thought he played pretty well. You're going to need depth, especially in your front line. Like, he's their only 7-footer. It's pretty crazy. I think tonight he's going to have a much bigger test than the Bulls because that's, I don't know what you saw. To me, that's like an unserious basketball team.
Yeah, no, they're silly.
They just roll the ball out, and I think they thought the game was over after they went up 20-6 in the first quarter and then just kind of rolled over. But Quinton Post was the story of the game. And in one breath, that's a good thing because he's an emerging talent and he, is a rookie. But at the same time, that's kind of where the Warriors are. Like, they're looking for those small victories in addition to one, of course, they got to get back to 500.
Yeah, they haven't had a 7-footer, I'd say, since Bogut, Festus Ezeli.
Durant. I mean,
Durant, is he a 7-footer? I always think he's like more 6'10 and a half, 6. We'll give him 7 feet.
But he's the closest thing to a stretch 4 or 5 that they've had. And I know he's not a traditional center, but I mean, seriously, like Dario Saric is probably the closest thing that they've had to Quinton Post, and he got played off the floor last year.
It's interesting because it's almost as if the Warriors, and I don't know, there's a lot, this just danced into my head.
PBJ?
I should sort of vet this out before I speak. Think before you speak, but it almost is as though the Golden State Warriors through the years have sort of rejected, while the rest of the league is zigging, the Warriors always sort of zagged. And that, yeah, okay, I know that's your formula for winning NBA. Stretch 5, get a 5 and get out and stretch the floor and be a 7-footer that can shoot. We don't succumb to that. That's not how we play. We do it with Looney. We do it with smaller guys because we're the Golden State Warriors. We subscribe to a completely different formula in terms of winning, and it's proven because we've won championships and you have not for the majority of the teams out there. And now it's almost as if someone took their arm and they're twisting it and they're like screaming, "Uncle, okay, we need to be like everybody else. We need to go get a stretch 5." And it's clear that it's not only a stretch 5, but it's offense.
Yeah.
I don't care if this guy's a 7-footer or he's 5'11". They just need someone who can put the ball in the hole.
And I think they've been telling you that because who's the one acquisition they've made in a trade? It's been for an offensively minded player. Like Schroeder can guard. He's pesky. Had a nice poke away in the backcourt against the Bulls in Sacramento. He's feisty. But they got him to get buckets. Like, they got him to help solve some of their half-court issues. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that, not just with Schroeder, but you start to see Santos play more, Post getting into the rotation, Moody getting some burn. Like, those are all players that I think are more offensively geared than defensive. Like, the two players that kind of got phased out against the Bulls were Gary Payton II and Trace Jackson Davis. Those are more defensively minded players. So the Warriors are trying to figure out how to generate offense, and I think Post absolutely fits that because the one thing that he did immediately, and he hasn't played with him much, but he can play with Steph. And that's really the most important part of their offense. You got to be able to play with 30. So the fact that he can take at least a little bit of pressure off of him and open up the floor a bit, I think that's massive for a 36-year-old.
Did you hear the story he relayed about Steph Curry, where he was talking about how they asked him, I think it was Anthony Slater, said, what's your relationship with like Steph Curry on the floor? And he's like, it's the second time I've played with him. But it's like it's more about off the court. And you hear about these things that people just don't know what it's like behind the scenes. And it was like 3 a.m. and he was at SFO and he needed a ride and couldn't get an Uber. And of all the people, everybody was taking off. There was Steph saying, "Hey, man, I got you. Let's go."
So there were a couple of theories about this. Number one, so Post is obviously not familiar with the Bay Area, right?
Yeah.
So he said he was probably a 20-minute detour or a 30-minute detour out of the way. I do need to know where he was going because Curry lives in Atherton. I think Post was headed to Redwood City. It's not really a detour. So, Steph, I don't know if he's as selfless as people are making him out to be at this point.
What are you implying here?
Well, it's not like he drove him to Vallejo and then had to go all the way back down to the South Bay.
So it was essentially on the way, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but Post didn't know it because he's not familiar with the 101. No, it was a really nice gesture, and I think it's just another one of those stories about Steph. Like, you'll never hear about it unless another player says something.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's got to be tons of those stories throughout the years.
God, yeah.
Where he's like, dude, just get in the car. It's all good, man. Like, no one, we're all here. We're all on the same team. That's another reason he's the selfless superstar.
They always talk about how practice, when they do practice, is always prolonged by Steph because he's always providing teaching moments for the younger players. But it's not as though he's just saying, hey, listen, do this, and it's not a quick exchange. He literally will sit there and say, no, this is what you got to do, and he gets involved. Meanwhile, Draymond will be there, hands on hip, like going, come on, man, let's go. But that's Steph. Steph literally is invested in the well-being of others, and that, that's apparent throughout his entire career.
The one thing he will also make you do is wait for 45 minutes to an hour after a game to go to the podium. Because as much as I love Steph, I mean, can you get the workout in a little bit faster? Like, you don't have to run 6 miles after you've already ran.
Is that what he does?
6 miles on the court. Yeah, he goes through a post-game workout. That's why he takes so long. Because usually, like tonight for the Lakers. So if I was going to the game tonight after buzzer Warriors win, they beat the Lakers, LeBron James and Anthony Davis will sprint damn near to the podium unless they're talking at their locker. But they just want to get out of there. Like, JJ Redick will do his post-game presser area right outside the Lakers locker room. And then Bron and AD typically will do the post-game together, so they just kind of knock it out. And they're out of there in like 30 minutes. Steph doesn't go to the podium. If the game ends 5:30, game ends at 7:30, he's not at the podium till like 8:30. I mean, this guy is going through workout after workout. He's got to get he's got to take a shower. He's got to get food. Just think about the media a little bit, Steph. We got places to be.
That's probably the biggest adjustment that players have to make when they go to the collegiate level to that of the NBA. Now, it's not as drastic as it once was because it's much more apparent, but LeBron James would always talk about this. When you're younger and you're in college, you just roll out of bed and you go and you play. When you get to the NBA game, you have to realize now that, yes, you're only 19, 20 years of age, and you're absolutely yoked and ripped as a young man. That's when you have to put the work in. It's just beginning in terms of what you have to do, like that is Steph. And that is getting in the weight room. That is putting in all the training. It's just starting as you get to the NBA level. It was never like that.
Yeah.
Once you got to the NBA, you just, you traveled, things were mailed in. And when you got to your mid-30s, your career was done. And now it's changed entirely, especially with the specialized training. Once these guys start making some money, they put these trainers on their payroll, including dietitians, and Steph is a product of that. But I don't think it was like that for them early on in their career.
No, I think the pivotal moment for Steph, I believe, was the 2016 finals, where he realized that he needed to get stronger. And I think he was 25 or 26 years old at the time, so it was a while ago, but it wasn't as noticeable, I think, during the KD years, but the last championship run, if you just post a picture of Steph at age 34 in 2022 and a picture of Steph at age 25 when you're in your athletic prime, he's all beefed up. He's got the scratches too from all the cuts that he takes, but he's in a completely different physical form than he was 10 years ago, which is amazing because he's closer to 40 than he is 30.
Yeah, I don't think we realize it because you see him every day and it's so gradual. But if you look back just, a couple of years ago or even 10 years ago, there used to be a thing called comic books when I was a kid.
Oh, I love them.
And there used to be a little ad for, I don't know, it was like some sort of protein shake that if you want to get big and you want to get the girls, drink or eat, whatever it is. And they would show this little caricature of this kid on the beach who was scrawny, getting sand kicked in his face. And then they show the before and then the after he drinks his protein and he's all beefed up. And that's like when you look at Steph Curry back in the day. I mean, he was this wiry little baby-faced kid. And now, he's still baby-faced, but he resembles nothing like what it is he was when he came into the league.
He basically got Popeye's spinach and transformed himself into just an absolute monster.
Good knowledge.
Yeah.
Olive oil.
One of my favorite cartoons.
So, the Golden State Warriors, and I you know where I'm going with this, but I do want to recognize, because I don't want to be...
Quinton Post a part of the rebuild?
I don't want to be perceived as a hater, but I do think that I was listening to you. I texted you yesterday.
Yeah, I'm sipping.
So 95-7 the game is
T.
Bar none Like if you want your sports talk radio, I'm not just saying that because, I'm an employee here. It's just simply this is where it's happening.
Especially on Saturdays from 9 to noon.
But typically through the week, we all have our certain go-tos, right? And for me, it's Steiny and Guru. If I'm in the city or if I have an opportunity to turn on the radio while I'm driving from point A to point B, I'll turn on Steiny and Guru. And I was a little surprised, I have to tell you, that the Quinton Post unfiltered love, the overwhelming support for the young man.
A 4-hour fawning.
Yes, for Quinton Post, especially by the grizzled grump, and that being Steiny, that was on board, although he was keeping it steered towards the middle a little bit.
Yeah,
was a bit surprising. So I text you just to sort of take the temperature, because usually my man Ev is just going to, he'll keep things balanced and saying, yeah, it's a bit of a love fest, but we got to feed the beast. But no. There was Ev saying, come on, man, Quinton Post is a real deal. I'm paraphrasing here. So are we all just in on Quinton Post in terms of being the future and the missing piece for the Golden State Warriors going forward?
Well, you kind of have to be right now. I mean, now I think that later tonight he's going to get a real taste of the NBA, because he's going to have to play against Anthony Davis. And he's not Nikola Vucevic. Vucevic is going to hang out at the three-point line, not really do much in pick and roll, can't defend. I mean, Quinton Post, that was as much of a shallow end game as one could ask for, right? You don't just jump into the Pacific Ocean. You get in from the beach, you dip your toes in, you wade into the water. That's a good game. Tonight he's going to be in the deep end. Tonight he's going to be against one of the games, if not the best two-way big in basketball, in Anthony Davis. So, and he's going to have to play probably 20 minutes. Like, they need him. So from that perspective, I'm buying in, because he offers something they don't have. And that is a stretch five, shooting, but more importantly, spacing. Like, one thing that my mind went to is, how does someone like Draymond fit? How does Kuminga fit? How do these players that have had trouble kind of, I guess, working together because there hasn't been enough spacing, can Quinton Post sort of unlock that? That's where I think is legit. Is he going to score 20 every night? No. He might not even be a 10-point per game scorer. But what he does is, I think he's going to allow other pieces to play with more freedom. And those players are the guys who are going to drive the bus. Curry, Draymond, Kuminga, to some extent Wiggins. Schroeder, I think, also is going to benefit from him. So it's not just about what he does, but how he impacts others. That's the legitimacy of it.
Is he a starter?
No. He'll probably come off the bench behind, I would say, Looney tonight. And actually, I didn't text you this because I wanted to save it for you. Your boy's in trouble.
TJD?
Yeah.
You keep telling me this. For months you've been telling me this.
Your boy's in trouble. And now there's a legitimate reason for him to not play, because Looney's always going to be the guy that Kerr leans on. And if you're going to find minutes for Post, they got to come from somewhere. And Trayce Jackson-Davis is still shooting 30% on balls outside the restricted area. Quinton Post, meanwhile, can at least shoot 40 from three. I like Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's obviously a far superior defender, better athlete, but I just feel like the guy that's impacted the most by Post is honestly Trayce Jackson-Davis.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there is a strong parallel between the two, which I'll get into, because I wanted to keep this. I wanted to keep this first segment.
Yeah, let's get all the
light. I just want to I want to be sort of, let's talk about Quinton Post playing well. We threw sugar at Steph Curry as being this remarkable person, as we all know, but why not restate the obvious there, that he's a nice guy?
You hiding your hammer over there?
Yes, because I am going, we're fully loaded, and I'm going to have to go after you in the next segment. The other thing I do want to mention is, we continue to talk and applaud one Quinton Post.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's by accident. You mentioned TJD and Quinton Post, that the Warriors got two guys who came into the league at 23, 24 years of age, respectively, and spent their entire collegiate careers in good programs in Boston College. And then in Trayce Jackson-Davis at Indiana, and Mike Woodson. I always talk about this. Woodson played in the NBA, coached in the NBA, so he knows how to teach the finer points of the NBA to some of these bigs. And after the Kuminga, after the Moody experiment, I think the Warriors were looking for sort of, let's get a little balance here. Let's not have to wait 3 to 5 years to see what it is that we have. Let's get guys who are a little bit more seasoned, hence TJD. And to your point where, he has to, what did you say? He's wading in the water. Now he's getting thrown into the deep end.
Yeah.
It gets accelerated, I think, a little bit more because he's not a wide-eyed teenager coming into the league. And I think that was done by design. And would you agree that the Warriors, after what it is that they've gone through with some of the teenagers recently in the lottery, purposely went out and got guys who are 24 years of age in their first season in the NBA, like that of TJD and now Quinton Post?
Yeah, I think they know who they are. Like, they're finished products. Now, that also means there's probably not a whole lot of room to develop or grow. I think Quinton Post can get better defensively, but, like, this is who he is. He's a 7-footer that is a little physical, and he's going to shoot around 40% from three. Like, that's who he is. He's not going to jump any higher. He's not going to be able to work on his dribbling package. He's not going to be hitting step-back 18-footers. He's not going to dunk on anybody. This is who he's 24 years old. Like, he's older than Kuminga, Pajemski.
He's as old as Zion Williamson.
I mean, yes, exactly, because he played 5 years in college. But I think Kerr is a little more inclined to trust those players because they've played enough basketball that there's a situational awareness that they naturally have that players who played 1 year of college or played in the G League or are a year removed from high school just don't have. And I think the fact that the Warriors have identified a couple of these guys in back-to-back drafts, that signals that those second-round picks, those guys are there because they're older. They're there because they're finished products, and they're there because they're a little limited. So let's just get guys in that know how to play basketball. That's where I think the Warriors didn't have a first-round pick last year, but this upcoming draft, when they do, wherever that is, I'm interested to see who they take, what kind of player they take, because it does feel like Mike Dunleavy Jr. leans more towards the guys that know how to play the game as opposed to the projects or the upside type of talent that could burgeon, could become something great, but you're going to have to wait a while and really kind of water that plant.
Well, let's continue to sugar this thing and plump up this turkey before I completely destroy this kid coming up in the next segment.
Dude.
But one of the things that...
He's a nice guy.
No, he is.
He seems pretty cool, honestly.
Yeah, he really does. And they really need, I think, a personality. And I think that personality is only going to get bigger. You can see it. There's a twinkle in this guy's eye. He's got something to say. And I think that as he gets more comfortable and gets a little bit older, that's going to come through.
Well, that's part of it too, right? Like he's got a good podium game.
Yeah.
He's been answering questions from the media for 5 years. He played at an SEC school and an ACC school. He's been in Starkville, Mississippi, and he's played in Boston. Like, he knows how to answer questions. He knows how to not get too high, too low. He's played for a couple of longtime coaches. Like, he's a hooper. He's an NBA player.
Yeah. And one thing, just getting back to his fundamentals that you learn at the collegiate level, and I don't want to sound like Joe Coach here, but one thing you can clearly see that jumps out at you is that he's always in the ready. You know, they always talk about be ready to shoot. When he catches, notice when he catches, he's in a shooting position. Like, that's one of the things that you always see coaches teaching young players who have to get their balance after making a catch out on the wing, or they got to put it on the floor to get into some sort of a rhythm so they can get their jump shot. Watch Quinton Post when he catches. He's in the ready. He's ready to shoot. And it may not be there. He may give it up on a pass, but you could just see fundamentally that this guy is sound. He's not blessed with the greatest athleticism or the greatest athletic tools, but you can see the fundamentals are just oozing out of this guy. And just keep on an eye on him tonight. Every time he catches out high or out on the wing or out in front, he's in a shooting position. And that's just clearly right off the chalkboard in Hoosiers in terms of learning how to play this game fundamentally. So there's a lot to get excited about. We got one more minute in this segment, and I'll give you the last 60 seconds to continue to blow up this kid before, of course, we know what's coming, impending doom on the next break.
Well, I don't have to do it. Number one, you're going to. Number two, Anthony Davis is going to do it. Assuming he doesn't get hurt, because that's another part of Lakers-Warriors that seemingly happens every single game. Anthony Davis will get hurt. But if he plays the full 48, Quinton Post is going to get introduced to what the NBA is really like. Because if he truly is a stretch five and he's going to play, you're going to have to guard the Davises. You're going to have to guard the Jokic's. You're going to have to guard a lot of top-flight players that are not just athletic, but they're skilled, and they're not afraid, unlike Vucevic, to step out and really get in your grill. So again, the threat of him being able to shoot should provide more spacing, but he himself, I think he's going to have a tough night tonight.
Well, but to your point, and again, just to sort of extol the virtues of this young man by the name of Quinton Post, is that when's the last time that AD played the Golden State Warriors where he had to get out on anybody? As a 5, am I going out to stretch on Draymond Green?
Hell no.
Am I getting out on Trace Jackson Davis? Am I going out to guard Kevon Looney because he's 25 feet from the hoop? This might be the first time that you may actually have an opening in the house where Steph Curry has some room to actually operate in terms of getting to the basket because you're removing that big 800-pound elephant from the room. So I don't know the last time AD actually had to step out and extend on anybody. And tonight might be the night because the Warriors have a quote-unquote stretch 5. We'll continue to talk about Quinton Post. And yes, I do have – the shoe is going to drop. And I do have some things that – not only about Quinton Post, but about the Warriors going forward and why this is a major, major concern as we continue. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, Warriors this week, just getting started.
Here with big savings on gig speed, only with Xfinity now through January 30th. Get gig internet at home for $25 a month for 1 year when you add an unlimited mobile line, which connects you to gig speed Wi-Fi on the road. Act fast today and save more than $650 over AT&T and Verizon in your first year. Plus, hurry and take advantage because right now you can also get a free 5G phone with trade-in.
Kuminga. Post, pick and pop, left wing. He got another one. Oh, Quinton Post. His 5th 3 of the night.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Evan Giddings, Dan DeBone talking about Quinton Post. Warriors This Week as the Golden State Warriors coming off a victory over the Chicago Bulls in emphatic style, running away and hiding in that fourth quarter, pivotal third quarter in which Golden State just put it into another gear as the Warriors try and make it 2 in a row. You know the Warriors, I read this somewhere, but the Warriors have not won 3 games in a row since early November. I want to say like November 6th.
Since they started 12-3. Yeah, they've had 2 back-to-back wins since that point. Minnesota and Washington, I think, was the most recent one. But real quick, Steve, can you bring that beat back real fast? So this song, Tweaker, which is LiAngelo Ball.
Yeah.
The Warriors were playing this with 3 minutes left during a timeout during the Bulls game because Lonzo's on the Bulls, and Lonzo was honestly dancing to it. They were down 20. The game was over. I thought it was like a troll job or something, and Lonzo was just back there gigging during the huddle. I thought it was pretty funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
I like the balls. I like you're in on the dad. Dad, I can take or leave, but the brothers, I like every one of them.
Dude, he's up there with one of the greatest sports dads of all time. All 3 of his kids are successful.
No doubt. Yeah.
I mean, and I do appreciate how once the children have gone on and done their respective things, LiAngelo's apparently a rapper now, but Lonzo and LaMelo are still hooping. You don't hear from him. Like, you heard it was all about LeVar Ball until he got his kids to where they needed to go. And at that point, he's just taking a back seat. Like, when was the last time LeVar Ball was in any sort of headline?
When he was trying to sell those $500 a piece tennis shoes.
That apparently got Lonzo his degenerative knee issues. Yeah. No, but that was also like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, it felt like.
It's good to see Lonzo back on the floor. I like Lonzo of
he's
all
good.
The balls. I like
he
Lonzo.
Can shoot.
Lonzo, to me, he's one of those guys that you win titles with Lonzo Ball. He's about defense. He's about connecting everybody. And his shot has got much better. But it's just good to see him back after everything that he's dealt with. I don't know that he'll ever be the same, but just good to see him playing ball again. And LaMelo's nuts. But by the way, the leading vote getter for this year's NBA All-Star game. And congratulations once again to Steph Curry, named a starter. How could you not? By the way, are you...
Well, I mean...
What?
He's only starting because Luka's hurt. If we're going to be honest about it.
Even if Luka's not hurt...
He didn't start last year.
But if Luka's not hurt, Luka's not starting. He hasn't played enough games. He's playing like...
Oh, well, now, but I'm saying if he hadn't gotten hurt...
Oh, okay. But I'm saying if he was healthy right now, he's not starting.
No. Yeah. But, yeah, Steph, look, he should start at Chase Center and have his... I mean, all the flowers that he absolutely deserves. The question that I have is the All-Star Weekend going to be about Steph in a praiseworthy and celebratory way, or is it going to be, oh my God, this guy's marooned in this building, and he's looking around at all these players that got help. LeBron and AD are together. You got Shea and Jalen Williams going to be there. Looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers, Mobley, Mitchell, and Garland, and there's old lonely Steph just sitting on the bench with no Golden State Warriors because Draymond's in the booth, hanging out with Shaq and Kenny.
He's not going to look at LeBron and AD saying and be envious and go, I wish I was like those guys, because they're essentially the same team.
KD, Booker, and Jimmy Butler are going to be there.
But when I think about LeBron and AD...
I mean, not Jimmy.
LeBron, AD, and the Los Angeles Lakers, Steph and Draymond of the Golden State Warriors, they're interchangeable. They're taking on a team tonight that it's like looking in the mirror. I know the Lakers are about 3 games better, 3 games ahead of them for, what are they, like in the 6th seed right now?
Yeah. Everyone's kind of...
But they're very similar teams.
Stacked up there.
You hear the exact same talk coming out of the Southland. Do we compromise the future of the trade deadline? It's an aging star in LeBron James at 40 years of age. What do we do? How do we get out of this? We're void of stars. We can't shoot. The 2 teams really, really reflect one another. I think in terms of where they're going and sort of the problems they're currently dealing with. Because I don't think the Lakers are going anywhere this year.
No, I don't think they can win more than a single playoff series if they can even win one. But, did you read the recent rumors about the Lakers this week?
AD?
Yeah, he wants a center.
Yeah. He's been playing the center. Well,
you are a center. Get your ass in the paint.
He doesn't like it.
I know. He's never liked it. He's the biggest 4 I've ever seen in my life. He's got a 7'12" wingspan. He's 7 feet tall. He wants to sit on the perimeter and just kind of coast, play center field, and block shots.
I would never go to the Lakers because only one of two things can happen. If you're a free agent, I don't know if that's a destination spot I want to play with LeBron. It used to be, let's go win a title. I'm Dwight Howard. I'll do anything. I'll give a body part to play out in Los Angeles and finally win that championship. The JaVale McGee's of the world. Now it's like, why would I go to LA? Because after a couple of games or after a couple of months, I'm going to get reviewed by the president and the GM, and that's not Rob Pelinka and company. I'm talking about, AD and LeBron James are going to pass judgment on me and determine as to whether or not, I fit in or not. There's just too much drama over there.
Well, you're going down there for the Kendrick Lamar, the women, weed, and weather. Like, you're not going there to play basketball at a super high level. You're going there to live in L.A. And our thoughts and prayers, obviously, down to everybody that's been affected by the fires. But the Lakers are no longer at a point where they are, I think, viewed as contenders. They're viewed as entertainers, and they're going to be in the news cycle no matter what. But I don't think they're competing for a championship this year. Neither are the Warriors. But in that respect, they are in a similar place where they have these aging superstars. I know AD's not as old, but I think he's in year 13 quietly.
30, 31, I want to say.
Yeah, he's 31 years old, but he's played a lot of basketball. And I don't know, like LeBron's kind of, he's not holding the franchise hostage, but is he going to come back next year? Is he going to retire in 2 years? What is the remainder of his future going to be? They got as many questions about LeBron as the Warriors do with Steph, I think.
You're talking about AD barking this past week about how he wants a center because he wants to go back to the 4 spot. Well, what's he going to do? He's not going anywhere. Like this bluster on the part of even LeBron James, who keeps quietly re-signing these one-year deals. He's entrenched in Brentwood in Southern California, and AD knows that his wagon is hitched to LeBron James, whatever it is that he's doing going forward in his NBA career. So stop with that because we know you're not going anywhere. Either one of those guys. And I don't know, to your point, if that's a good or a bad thing for the Los Angeles Lakers and their fan base.
No, but if we are going to talk about this game, though, like they are a tough matchup for the Warriors. They always have been. And
because they're big.
Yeah, they're big. They're physical. They control the tempo of a game. Like they manhandled the Celtics a couple nights ago when the Warriors were kicking the Bulls' ass down in SoCal. The Lakers were basically just taking care of business with the Celtics. And they didn't even have a strong beginning to their second half. So the fact that Anthony Davis, like I think he's their best player. I know LeBron is, he had 20 and 14 and 6 in that game, and he's still putting up big numbers. But if Anthony Davis is healthy, it's going to be a real challenge for the Warriors, especially without Draymond Green, because for as offensively challenged as he is, and he's had a roller coaster ride of a season too, but he is someone that makes things difficult for Davis, and has for a long time.
Well, getting back to Quinton Post, it has always been a bad matchup for the Golden State Warriors. That was
That's true.
QP. So now that we've got Quinton Post, does that change the dynamic? I talked about how
BQ before Quinton.
I talked about how Anthony Davis can just hang out in the paint and be disruptive because he's a good defensive player and he's good at blocking shots. And Steph Curry has nowhere to go. No one does. But he's going to have to extend on Quinton Post. Does that change the dynamic? We'll find out coming up in a matter of hours later tonight, of course, right here. You've got Warriors Live.
I think it's going to be Grandy tonight.
Grandy, Warriors Live.
He'll be at Chase Center tonight for pre and post. And you're right. The Warriors haven't played with a player like Post who just demands attention, whether he's going to shoot the ball like he did against Chicago or not. You even saw against Sacramento that he could take a little bit of pressure off of other perimeter players. It was just that down the stretch of that basketball game, nobody could make a shot. And Curry was taking 30-footers. Wiggins was blowing layups left and right. But there were openings to score. It's just a matter of putting the ball in the hole. But I also saw, again, a couple days ago, like Anthony Davis is not, like he has to guard Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis doesn't play in the paint. He's taking 7 threes a game. And Davis, that's where he's unique. When he's at the peak of his powers, he can guard the three-point line, he can guard the paint, and I would say until Victor Wembanyama, there hasn't been a poster child for a better sort of all-around defender as a 7-footer. I mean, he's the most versatile defender that I've seen up until Wemby came along.
All right, so here we go when it comes to Quinton Post.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Now listen.
Floor's yours.
Don't get this crooked. It's the Lakers. I asked you what time the game is tonight because I'm looking forward to tonight's game. Thanks to Quinton Post, he's rejuvenated this team. It's been the proverbial shot in the arm.
5:30.
It's exciting. Quinton Post. I mean, all eyes on him as far as I'm concerned. I can't wait to see what the guy is going to do tonight. But here's the problem going forward: is that, and maybe this goes back to Steiny and Guru. By the way, my go-to when it comes to 95.7 The Game in that all-star lineup.
Appreciate it.
There was Guru talking about that now they've got their guy. Like maybe you don't have to go out and make that trade. You don't need to go get Vucevic. You don't need to go get a stretch 5, or you don't need to bolster this team because it's been under your nose the whole time. It's been in-house. You got him right there at the end of the bench. He's the kid from the Netherlands. By the way, did you know that Holland has the tallest people per capita in the world?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, wait, Holland or Denmark?
Well, Denmark, the Netherlands.
Oh, gotcha. I'm a big fan of Danish soccer, but basketball players don't really know too much.
A lot of the Danes and a lot of people from the Netherlands, a lot of the women are extremely tall, and they play professional volleyball in Italy. Italy is very big for professional volleyball, and so a lot of them will play over in Italy. That's where they all go, but they're the tallest people in the world.
Huh, I did not know that.
So Quinton Post, very tall indeed, and a guy who can shoot. But it's almost like the worst thing that could happen to the Golden State Warriors. And I know, because here we go, the show's just getting underway.
Please explain.
I'm still a proponent of this team. Instead of trying to catch the Lakers and going forward and thinking of, hey, we're only 3 games from whatever.
You want to catch the Jazz?
I want to go in the other direction. I want to get in the lottery. I want to hit reset. I want to get a single-digit draft pick. Or I want to step to the plate and give me my 3% chance of landing Cooper Flagg. I want to take a swing. I want to get to the plate and make a big swing here. I don't want to middle any longer. That's a place where teams go to die. That's where you become irrelevant forever. And what does Quinton Post do? What it does is that it reinforces. You know what he is? He's like, you're familiar with Greek mythology? It's like the sirens. What were they, like half beast, half woman?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the ones that
they would
come out of the water.
Yeah, they would sing the sailors to the rocky shores, and they would eventually crash their boats and drown.
Yep. And that's what Quinton Post is to a certain degree. No, don't hit reset just yet. Well, he's old enough to be in Homer's Odyssey.
Yeah, don't. Homer's Odyssey, Gnaz. Don't hit reset. Don't blow it up. No. You got an opportunity here with me. I'm a 7'1" guy that's the stretch 5 you've been looking for so long.
You hear this guy, Pasta?
And now you don't need to make drastic changes because you got me, and I've been here all along. It's fool's gold. And while I like him and we'll see where this goes, that's not the answer. The NBA, and especially the Western Conference, the good teams are not comprised of guys who go 57 overall or 52 like that of Trace Jackson Davis. It's not as though everybody missed on these guys. There's a reason why, and while he's a good player, he's still, in my estimation, a fringe player. What you need are game changers. What you need is, when you think about bigs, it's not Quinton Post, it's Chet Holmgren. When you think about bigs, it's not Quinton Post, it's Wembanyama. When you think about bigs, it's not Quinton Post, it's Jaren Jackson Jr. It's boys that are ripped, that are athletes, that can make a difference. But because this guy comes out of nowhere and hits a couple of threes, suddenly, it's like, wait a minute. It's almost like the Giants, Pasta. Just before the trade deadline last year, they sweep the Colorado Rockies, and our man Farhan's like, well, I don't know that we need to be.
We got life.
We don't need to sell. We don't need to blow this up. I think we can actually make a run at the playoffs. The sirens are singing, baby.
And there's not one not named Quinton Post. All right, I thought you were going to go in a completely different direction. A couple things off.
I might.
Number one, you know Draymond was drafted in the second round, right?
No, he's the exception to the rule.
You know Jokic was drafted in the second round,
I know.
Right?
Another exception to the rule.
It sounds like you think that Quinton Post is like the next coming of Dirk Nowitzki. You think he's going to impact winning that much? Like, I like the kid. Don't get me wrong.
No, I'm saying he won't.
Well, then...
The interpretation is that he will. To your point is that Draymond and all these other guys came in the second round. So everybody's like, well, we don't need to blow this up because we found another diamond in the rough, much like we did a year ago with Trey Saxon-Davis.
But if you don't think that he's that good, then he shouldn't help them win, right? And then they can crater out regardless.
No, what I'm saying is that what it is that he's doing right now is creating a false sense of identity and or security that you don't need to get drastic. Whereas maybe just a couple of days ago, you were thinking about getting into the lottery. Just a couple of days ago, you were thinking about making that huge trade. And I don't think that they should be active at the trade deadline, but I think that maybe because all that's been shelved or put on the table because of what it is that Quinton Post is doing, it's a very dangerous thing to subscribe to.
Well, I do know that Vucevic's agent was at Chase Center a couple days ago. He's also the agent, I think, for Pods. Like, the Warriors are talking to the Bulls about Vucevic. Like, he's been the guy, right? Where I thought that you were going to go is don't let Quinton Post blind you from the fact that you need that kind of player, but he's not the player. Like, in my mind, what Quinton Post does, it means that...
I'm saying that sort of indirectly. It's sort of...
Oh, so like you think the fact that they've had success now for a couple games with a stretch 5 makes them more inclined to go out and swing to get that kind of player?
No, it's because they've had success that they won't go get that player, that they don't need to be active because they think they have found what it is that they've been looking for, and it's been in-house the whole time in Quinton Post.
Yeah, and yeah. I think that's good for multiple reasons. Number one, you either figure out if you can play or can't play over an extended period of time. Number two, you legitimately get a look at what an offense could be with a stretch 5. That's something you can address this summer. I don't know if you address it at the deadline because apparently the hang-up is Vucevic, who seems like the most likely target. Bulls want a first-round pick. Warriors don't want to give up a first-round pick. And I wouldn't either. And it's not because of Quinton Post. Like, I just don't think Vucevic is all that impressive.
Plus, he's another guy. He's, 34, 35?
Yeah, but, I mean, at the very least, he can shoot. You know, he's a 20-10 player. I think a lot of the numbers are a bit hollow. He hasn't contributed much to winning in Chicago, but he's, I think, had a couple postseason series. He's got some cup of coffee in the playoffs. Like, he's not a bad player, but I just think there's two schools of thought, which is Quinton Post means that we don't need Vucevic, or it means we actually should go out and get him because he's just a better version of Quinton Post. I subscribe to the former, which is I think you just got to play the kid and see what you got and see if there's actually some sustainability to this. And that's why, again, I think tonight is probably, like, I think there are going to be some big takeaways from this basketball game because Post has never played against a player like Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I don't think you can take too much away from what it is that he did last night. And even if he takes the big middle of a donut tonight and doesn't score, it's still part of the growing and learning process. And there's a lot that this kid has still got to get under his belt before we can pass any real judgment on who he is as a basketball player. Let's get out to the nation's capital. He's one of our favorites. D's hanging out in D.C. What's up, D? How you been, buddy?
D.
What's going on, coconuts? How you guys doing?
Awesome, man.
Hey, G, what's going on with you, man? Are you all right? You sound like you have a head cold or something.
Flu game, D.
Oh, okay. Just checking on you, man. Just checking on you. Hey, Deb, I agree with you 1,000,000% about what you just said, man. I hope the Warriors don't get fooled like they got fooled last season at by the trade deadline. I think it is vital. It is important that they make a move, 1 or 2 moves, just to give Steph Curry the opportunity to win, man. Because if they approach this as lazy as they did last year, forget about it, man. It'll be over for this organization, man. It'll be over for that. Because I don't see any way Steph Curry at 37, 38 next year is going to be a great player, the great player that we know that he is right now. You can already see faults in his game. You can already see that his health is failing. And you already know what Draymond is right now, right? Draymond, in my opinion, should retire. At the end of this season, Draymond should retire. So this is the opportunity to go out and make a play for an opportunity to win. And that's this year. You try to take advantage of that now. That's all I got, brothers. Have a great Saturday, man.
Strong as always, D. Don't be a stranger.
D.
We look forward to you next Saturday.
Yeah, just be careful with those D.C. brunches, D.
I don't know if they should D.C. brunches.
Dude, brunch in Washington, D.C., I have heard I mean, that's like being out until 4 a.m. in New York City. Like, those brunches go hard.
What are you talking about? Brunch, the meal?
Yeah, dude. Like, everyone.
That's a staple in the nation's capital? That's something they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a common activity in the South in general, but in D.C., a couple of my buddies say people dress up like it's the Kentucky Derby.
To go to brunch.
To go to brunch, to drink a lot of mimosas, to get a lot of calories and carbs, bagels, bacon, eggs, all the rest.
Oh, wow.
A lot of Southern comfort in the nation's capital.
I don't think of D.C. as being the South, but you're making a comparison that they're...
Well, but, there's different influences, right? I mean, It's right next to, the DMV. We don't have to do a geography lesson, but my point is, apparently, D's got there's a lot of nice meals that people are indulging in right about now, which is approximately like 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
So, a little late for brunch, but...
Never too late.
So here's the thing. D's, I don't know about... I mean, Draymond retired. I'd try and trade him if that's possible. But that goes back to my point that I hope that we have not lost, and maybe it was never on the table, but my sentiment was that before Quinton Post is that this is a team that has to get to the plate and take a serious swing. Now, I know not everybody's on board with that sort of thinking, but whatever that is, I've mentioned Zion Williamson. I'd be in for Zion.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You've got to
do a serious swing as far as resetting.
Improving this basketball team. Quinton Post is not that guy. Quinton Post is not somebody that you can build around. That's the point I'm trying to make here. He could be a nice basketball player, but that's not, you need stars and you need superstars. And you've got to go out, and in order to get lucky, in order to find the next SGA or Jalen Brunson, you got to be active. The only reason they got those guys is through trades. And you've got to be willing to be a bit of a riverboat gambler. And you're in a position now where you have to go out and do something a bit drastic and be a bit risky. That's the only way you can rebuild and head in the right direction. To me, again, this is not a recipe, despite what it is they did against the Chicago Bulls, for joining the upper tier of the Western Conference. And I'm talking about being one of the top 2 or 3 seeds. This is, to me, when I look at the Golden State Warriors, it's a team that's, as Bill Parcells once said, you are what your record is, and they're a 10 seed on a good night. And I think that there's one of 2 ways to look at this. Either there's only one way, and that is to go backwards and to get into that lottery and get a single-digit draft pick. You have to continue to think about a rebuild. And my only concern when it comes to Quinton Post, and this isn't necessarily a reflection on him, I just hope that it doesn't deter or it doesn't alter that thinking of what should be the collective mindset of the Golden State Warriors, that we still need to drastically improve this roster.
Well, I do want to get into that more on the other side, because I think he also indicates something about just Dunleavy's philosophy, like his approach to drafting, his approach to development, his approach to players, because he's had some hits, but there is something missing. We can dig into it on the other side. Also, Santa Cruz Warriors color analyst, Dr. Joaquin Wallace, is going to join us at 10:30. So he saw a lot of posts. He has an idea about how they've developed a few of these players.
Oh, right on.
Has got some thoughts on the Warriors. So he's going to join us at 10:30.
Joaquin Post.
Dr. Joaquin Wallace.
Dr. Joaquin Wallace joining us coming up in a matter of moments. All in, SF. We see you. The rest of the callers, hang in there. Got to get to a break. We'll continue to talk about the Golden State Warriors. We'll talk about one Quinton Post when we continue here with Evan Giddings and Dan Avone. It's Warriors This Week. Back with more after this.
Looking for the perfect venue for your next meeting or special event? Discover History Center.
Dude, he couldn't miss.
And you could see that the form is there. It's not flukish. Guy can shoot.
He got 10 threes up in 14 minutes. I mean, that's part of it, too. It's like, I do think there is something to just the willingness to shoot, because they don't have a lot of players on that team that when they get the ball, it's immediately going up. Or if it is, it's because it's like, well, all right, Lindy Waters got to take a three, or Moses Moody has been inconsistent, although he shot really well last night, or 2 nights ago. Apparently, Guy Santos can't miss. You like him?
I like Guy Santos. Guy Santos is a high. How can you not like Guy Santos? There's probably not a coach alive that doesn't approve of someone like that, a Guy Santos. High energy, just willing to work, and could shoot.
Another second-round pick.
Exactly. But there's too many. See, this is
no. This is where we build.
No, well, that's the problem. You can't build with pieces like Quinton Post and Guy Santos. Great. Don't get me wrong. I love the energy. I love that. But that's on a good team. These are 7, 8, 9. They can't be guys that are heavily relied upon. Again, when you think of the West, and if you really want to walk down OKC, you want to get in the neighborhood of Houston or even a Dallas or a Memphis, it's not with guys like this. This is fool's gold. You can't do it with the Guy Santoses of the world. These are nice players, but you really want to go and match up roster for roster and throw Guy Santos and Quinton Post and GP2 and Lindy Waters and Slow-Mo and put them up against what it is that Houston has with Amen Thompson and Jalen Green, and the same thing with Jaren Jackson, Gigi Jackson with Memphis. I mean, we're talking about the landscape of the West now has some young, athletic studs. And the Warriors have some, this is fun, but this isn't what you build around. And that's part of the problem here, is because I think that there's this sort of diagnosis of this Warrior basketball team and specifically these players that they're generational talent. And they're not.
No, I look, I get it, but at the same time, you just mentioned a team like Memphis, and a player who's given them tick this year is Jalen Wells. Like, he was the 39th overall pick. He was his second rounder. Actually played at Sonoma State, who recently just canceled their athletic programs, which is kind of a sad story, but went to Washington State, second round pick. Gigi Jackson, I don't think was a very high pick.
It was a first rounder.
Well, first rounder, but late. Like, you're looking at Brandon Boston Jr., but you're right. The two guys that change what all of those players look like are John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., who are both top 4 picks. That is what the Warriors, I don't know if they can lean all the way into that, though, because they have Steph on their team. And to me, trying to tank is an unacceptable strategy if you have Curry on the roster. So that's the rock and the hard place they're stuck between, is not fully leaning into what typically teams do to rebuild and reset, but also not being good enough to contend for a title. So you have to figure out somewhere in the middle. Like, I think Mike Dunleavy Jr., the two things, or really the one thing that he hasn't been able to do, to your point, is get the big guy. Like, whether it's in a trade or hit in a draft, it seems like he has an eye for talent, and it's only been 2 drafts, and he didn't even have a first-round pick this year. But Podziemski, Trace Jackson-Davis, and now Quinton Post all look like NBA players. Okay, so how are you going to find the big guy, the big fish? That's something that he still hasn't answered yet, and it appears to be like they're a little reluctant to acquire that player in a trade, because I think they do really, I don't know, they have a value of draft capital, and that's actually something that I do appreciate about this front office is if you look at the teams that have built young and built well, they've done it through the draft. And I think the Warriors are trying to do that while also, of course, appease Steph by giving him as much of a roster as they can.
All right, let's do it. Let's open up the phone lines at 888-957-9570. Off to Los Altos, and we start things with George this morning. George, what's up, buddy?
Hey, guys. I agree with you that Quinton Post isn't the answer, and what he's doing is great, but I just look at that as encouraging. I look at Trace Jackson Davis's development as encouraging. and I look at pods as encouraging. But that's as far as I'll take it. I think Dunleavy has done the best he can with what he has. I mean, we went out and got Buddy Hield, who has made more three-pointers in the last 5 years than any player in the NBA, including Steph. But he's just not hitting the shots that we were hoping he was going to hit, and he was going to fill the void after we lost Clay. So I think our answer isn't also one guy. Like, let's go out and get just Zion. Let's go out and get Jimmy Butler. They need more than one dude. They need at least two. And if they're going to do anything involving Zion Williamson, it would have to include Brandon Ingram. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. But if you can get two players like that, especially with Zion has his history of injuries, but I think he's going to get the Steph Curry effect if he ever came here. And I think he would lose weight, and I think he would do what's necessary to be great again because he's playing next to Steph Curry. And that is a big, big intangible that really has a lot of merit to it. And then finally, fellas, I think our answer isn't necessarily going to be here within our borders. I think it's going to be in Europe. And I looked this up, and I believe we do have the ability to sign a European free agent and bring him over here to help us out without giving up the world. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, George. I thought he was going to tell us who that European is. Just a European in general. Okay.
Well, apparently they got their hands in Denmark looking for Quinton Post. But even all of those, pardon me, those international players that are legit game changers, like all those guys, you got to get through the draft.
Yeah. I think he makes a lot of good points. I would say, George, that you can get a big piece and then get draft picks, whether it's through the lottery. And then this is going to take a little while. I know none of us have patience, especially when it comes to the Warriors. But if you get to a team that has a centerpiece, I don't care if it's Zion, I don't care who it is that you get, and then you have draft picks that you can see that are developing, that there's something there, and that the future is bright, and that it becomes directional. We know where we're headed. I always reiterate this, Ev, that this is a team that's lacking an identity. I don't know what the hell the Warriors are right now, even with the Quinton Post. And so you need to establish that, and you have to find out, and you can do that. You can do that, but you have to get aggressive. You have to be aggressive. The only way that you can change things is by going out and being assertive in the market. And that means trades, or that means falling back and getting single-digit draft picks in the top 10 and at least give yourself a puncher's chance to land, Cooper Flag. But that's where you're at as a franchise.
Well, but aren't those two things contradictory? Like if you're going to go out and make a big trade, say this offseason, that's going to cost you draft picks.
Well, not if it's Draymond Green, not if it's somebody that I don't want to lose Wiggins, but if I have to, I will. I'm not letting, I'm not going to let anybody touch my draft picks. And I'm going to try and sell something that I feel as though is not part of my future. My whole focus, Ev, is to go young and have it tomorrow and stop looking in the rearview mirror at what was in 2016.
Yeah, but in order to get something, you got to give something. And that's also one of the predicaments I think the Warriors find themselves is they don't have a lot that other teams want outside of draft picks. If I'm another team looking at the Warriors roster, I might like Kuminga. Maybe Draymond's going to be able to help you. Steph is the only guy that I want. He's the only player that I want, and he's off the board. So what else do I want? I want your picks because I'm willing to bet as another organization that the Warriors are going to be in the lottery relatively soon. And that's why I know that people want the front office to be aggressive and they want them to cash in their chips, whether it's at the deadline or this upcoming summer. But I honestly think that being patient right now is not a poor strategy because you have to allow for the possibility that this team bottoms out naturally. And the last place that you can be is like last season where you didn't make the playoffs and someone else owns your first-round pick because then you can't get better. You're getting older, but then you are going to rely on the Guy Santoses, the Quinton Posts, the Trace Jackson Davises, who are all nice picks, but second-rounders are generally not ones you build franchises around. So the Warriors, to me, their most valuable assets are the one thing that you're talking about needing, which is picks, in order to try and rebuild this thing. By the way, shout out to Echo Pest Control, donated $5 in the YouTube chat to say, Evan, what about sending Draymond Green to the Nets for Ben Simmons, who's expiring? Then Schroeder, Loon, and GP all expire. That opens up cap space. That is light years. I don't know if the Nets would... I don't know if there's a lot of teams that want Draymond Green, honestly. And I also don't think that...
The Lakers would take him.
But I don't know who the Warriors would be able to get back, though. And that's another thing, too. It's like, I wouldn't mind trading Draymond at some point in the next year or so, but it's only if he proves that he can't help you anymore. Like, I wonder if the injuries that have begun to pile up, that's a red flag for me. I don't think Draymond's great anymore, but he's definitely not a poor player. But if he can't stay on the floor, then that's an issue.
I wouldn't be surprised if his hometown of Detroit wouldn't see value in a veteran and a very young team to give them some balance. And maybe the one thing that Detroit, who's taken strides this year, and thankfully Monty Williams and company are in the rearview mirror, and that's a team that's got much better, that they're all about young kids. That
Detroit?
Maybe, if they couldn't use...
my guy has turned him around.
Jalen Duren?
No, J.B. Bickerstaff, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
but that could be a fit. And going back home to Detroit, and they can recognize that there's something to sell here. And if they want to give up on some of those young pieces, I think there's it depends on how Draymond finishes out the season, but I still think that there's value with Draymond Green because he makes you a better basketball player. Back out to the phone lines at 888-957-9570. P-Town. Kevin's in Pleasanton. Kev, what's up, man?
They're going to say Piedmont.
What's up, guys? Hey, listen, I just got in my car. I'm on the way taking some clothes to some victims that have been hurt by the fires in L.A.
So, good for you, man.
And thanks. And I heard saying that we got to go younger and this and that. Until Steve Kerr's contract expires, sorry, guys, nothing's going to happen because he has a system. Can you imagine if Steve Kerr took over one of these young teams right now? He'd be yelling at the guys because they can't shoot threes, right? If you could, I just want to ask you guys a question right now. Would Steph Curry start for Cleveland right now?
Yes.
Okay, that's one yes.
Devon?
Would he start for the Cavaliers? Okay. Yes, he would. He'd have to. I understand what you're saying with Mitchell and Darius Garland, but go ahead.
Yeah, so no, my point is and I've been saying this for like 3 years, guys, is that I blame Steve for the decline of Steph. I blame Steve for Clay as well. Point is that as you get older, if you don't put in the work, you're going to decline. As you get older, time just declines as well, your ability to shoot and do all the things you can do. Okay, Steve knows that. He could have built the team around the athleticism around the guys to where Steph doesn't have to run around 5 miles a game. There's no way Steph should be playing basketball for 14 years still running 5 miles. It just doesn't make any sense. And all this screening and rescreening and rescreening and rescreening for Steph to get a shot, these other teams are doing the screen, rescreen, and then a shot. We're doing 4 to 5 rescreens for a shot for Steph. And we're losing so much momentum by doing that. So, unfortunately, guys, we can bring in all the young talent until Steve Kerr's contract expired, unfortunately, then the philosophy is not going to change, which is shoot threes, but shoot threes for Steph, unfortunately. And I hate that because I think that Steph should be able to come in, get 15 points a night, 10 assists, and he would be happy as hell with the winning program. I really do, guys. And Clay wouldn't have had to leave either because you got all these athletes that are going to the rack and dishing the ball to him. All these retread guys we got, and you were spot on when you said the Post and Gee and all those guys would be 15th and G Leaguers for some of these other teams that you named in the West. They straight up. Nothing against their talent. They just would be G Leaguers. So until we get rid of Steve, which is, one more year in his contract, I believe. So until that happens, unfortunately, we're just going to have to bite the bullet and then build, and maybe we can get the Houston coach to come over for the Warriors because Joe Lacob got a bunch of money.
Thanks, Kev. Appreciate it. What do you say, Ev? Is it all Kerr's fault?
No. First of all, thank you for your service. What he's doing is very important.
Kev.
Yeah, appreciate that, Kev. But I don't think it's all on Steve Kerr. Again, we've talked about this. Like the fact that we are discussing the Santoses, the Posts, and other guys towards the bottom of the roster means the roster's not very good. I mean, and I think that Kerr's, what they're actually going to have to deal with is when this team is whole, when Kuminga and Draymond comes back, the fact that Santos and Post probably need to get some tick means that, again, we're stuck with the same problem, which is from roster spots 4 through 15, you don't really know who's good on a given night and who's not. So I can't point it all at Kerr. By the way, Trace Jackson-Davis, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, Moses Moody, they've all played the 5th through 8th most minutes of any Golden State Warriors players this year. They're all 24 and younger. Like him, the idea that Kerr doesn't like young players, to me, is a bit of a misconception. I think that he's had so much talent on past teams that he hasn't had to play young guys, but it's not like he's unwilling to. In fact, I actually think that we've seen some development from these younger players. It's just that there's not enough talent to extract. You know, outside of Kuminga, who's the most talented young player in this team? And what do people legitimately expect them to become? So because Kerr can't transform Brandon Podziemski into the future all-star that Joe Lacob is talking about him being, is not an indictment on Kerr. It means that Pods might just not be that good.
Let's get out to Jimmy in Bayview. Wants to continue to talk about Steve Kerr and his future going forward with the Warriors as the head coach. What's up, Jimmy?
Hey, guys. Happy Saturday. With Steve Kerr, I just don't know that he knows how to rebuild with young players. As a player, you know, he was under Phil Jackson, Popovich, Lenny Wilkins. He was on a lot of win now teams, and you know he kind of waltzed into a coaching job where he's managing personalities. He didn't come up through the minor leagues. He didn't coach in Belgium like Nick Nurse, and a lot of these coaches, you know, really came up through the trenches. So I'm not sure he really knows how to build a team, or, you know, through youth and letting them make mistakes. And, you know, the organization vacillating between, you know, let's go young, let's do this 2 timeline thing. I mean, you could have let Kerr go and let Kenny Atkinson take over the reins. You had that opportunity. So, to some degree, I do agree with a little bit of what the last caller had to say about, you know, letting her play out this kind of lame duck session, and then kind of embrace this rebuild, because you saw a sample of what it could be last night. What do you guys think?
It's interesting. I think that, well, first of all, Kenny Atkins being the head coach, I don't know that the record's necessarily different, because this is just not Cleveland, right? That's just I think you sort of make the point.
They might have a couple more wins, but this team wouldn't all of a sudden be transformed into a top, I would say, 6 seed.
Yeah, listen, that just goes to show you that the NBA is all about, you know,
it's about talent. Dudes. Yeah. It's about players.
It's about having personnel, and the Warriors they haven't had that for a couple of years now.
Also, are people under the impression that Steve Kerr is the one who makes decisions about the roster? Like, he's involved in all the conversations, but he's not the one who puts this roster together. If you really want to go down that road, Steve Kerr actually has a pretty good track record as a front office executive. When he was president of basketball operations with the Suns from 2007 to 2010, they had like a 65 winning percentage. He was the one that brought in Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, that didn't work out, though.
Well, he was also like 36.
Yeah. Well.
You know how they gave up for him?
Who?
Rudy Fernandez.
Oh, really?
Like, none of those draft picks turned into anything anyways. Like, I think if Kerr was someone that was really running this team, I do think that the Warriors would view their trade, their draft picks as a little more expendable.
I would say this, though, to the callers that are pointing a finger at Steve Kerr. And I always tell you this, that sometimes a new voice, as this team gets younger, that it's not that Steve Kerr is no longer smart, he's no longer relatable, but sometimes, and you're seeing this play out in Sacramento, that you just need a new voice. That sometimes change for the sake of nothing else but change works. Mike Brown is a hell of a coach. And Doug Christie comes in and he just simply becomes a new voice when things get a little bit stale. And sometimes you bring somebody else in that's a little bit younger and it's just somebody new. Players will respond. That's a really sort of fine line, and it's a difficult thing to sort of, get your arms around when you talk about having that little X factor as to what it is that players respond to. And the only concern I would have with Steve Kerr, I can't point at anything specifically that he's doing or not doing. It's just that sometimes when you've been there for a while, your message doesn't have the same sort of impact that it once did. Let's get out to Mac hanging out in San Francisco, sneak in a couple of more calls. We'll sneak in one more and the rest of you just hang out. But Mac in San Francisco, take us to the break. Mac, what's up, buddy?
Well, I think you guys are underestimating Quinton Post and G. Santa. I think that there's a line from an old song years ago that says, if you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with. Those guys should be given an opportunity to fail. They haven't failed yet. Let Quinton Post play in the Laker game. See how he matches up against Anthony Davis. Let him shoot some more three-point shots. If he keeps hitting 5 out of 10, the guy needs to be on the floor. Especially, he didn't turn the ball over. He's a decent rebounder. He's running the floor, and he's going to get better if he plays. Same thing with G. Santos. Now, when Kuminga comes back and you start Kuminga as forward with Wiggins on the other side, and Quinton Post gets an opportunity to play, I think that the Warriors could actually be very successful for the remainder of the season.
Hey, Mac, before you go, really quick, just sing me one line from Love the One You're With. Take us to the break by singing one line.
All right. If you can't be with the one you love, honey, love the one you're with.
Hell yes!
You got to love the one you're with.
Sing it, man. That is a great note.
Mac taking us to a break strong. All right, when we continue on the other side, it's Dr. Joaquin Wallace, who knows Quinton Post probably better than anybody. He saw him up close and personal for the majority of the season out in the G League.
Yeah, in Santa Cruz.
We'll see we'll talk to the doc, who is the analyst for the Santa Cruz Warriors. That's coming up next. We're also going to get to Kurt in Oakland. The rest of the callers, hang in there. More of your phone calls, more of the Warriors talk on Warriors This Week with Evan Giddings and Dan Avone after this.
Hey, let's throw a party this year for the big game.
Oh, great idea.
Santos puts it on the deck. He'll bring it up himself. Bounce pass Podziemski. Podziemski steps middle, throws out. Looney to Santos. Above the break, left side. 3-ball for the Brazilian. Timeout for the Bulls. 6:57 to go in the half. Chicago 44 at Golden State 43 on the Warriors Radio Network, presented by United Airlines.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
We got a Bohemian and Chavano Hield. We got a Brazilian and Guy Santos. And now we got the big fellow from the Netherlands and Quinton Post.
The Golden State Internationals.
That's right. We also have a gentleman out in Oakland wants to talk about Steve Kerr, but not hating on Steve Kerr. That's right. We need somebody to defend the former Wildcat out of the University of Arizona. Let's get out to Kurt, hanging out in Oakland. Kurt, what's on your mind, buddy?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call. These Kerr haters are just making me laugh because they want to blame him for everything, where he's not the main problem. He empowers players to step up and play better, but if they aren't stepping up and playing up to the potential, what's the point in playing them? He doesn't want to overplay Curry, and Green, but, people just need to step up and do their job, and if they can't, what's the point? People want to talk about the youngsters. Well, the youngsters look good because they've had time to marinate. What is it? Santos has been in the G League for about 3 or 4 years, so he knows the system. Post wasn't rushed up because he learned the system and got into playing shape because he wasn't healthy when they drafted him. But people don't understand that. They also don't understand that the Warriors have failed the past 5 times drafting big men, and the big men were brought up too quickly, and they didn't pan out the way you were expecting them to pan out. So what's the point in rushing somebody up? Post has potential. It's one game. Santos looks good. Let's see what happens. But, people need to get off of Kerr and quit blaming him for everything. People forget, Don Nelson didn't want to play Steph Curry. He played him, 1 minute in New York, and Steph Curry missed a 3 because he took it. Don Nelson had to play him out of necessity. But Don was the same way. Larry Brown was very similar. Tayshaun Prince forced his hand because Tayshaun knew how to play. People forget, in the Olympics, Larry Brown coached the bronze medal. He had LeBron, Wade, and who was it? Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
They barely played because they were rookies.
Gotcha, Kurt.
All right, Kurt.
No, I think it's a fair point. And we're going to talk to someone right now who knows a whole lot about coaching.
He sort of set the stage for us. Thank you very much, Kurt. As we talk now with Dr. Joaquin Wallace, who is the analyst for the Santa Cruz Warriors, and he knows Quinton Post probably better than anybody in this room.
What's up, Doc?
Hey, what's going on?
Doc, how are you? Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, you know what? I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
So what we're seeing of Quinton Post, are you somebody that you've witnessed this firsthand? Has he shown signs of being this guy? And talk about sort of his growth from when he first got to Santa Cruz to where he's at right now.
Well, I've been a fan of Quinton Post. Me and Kevin Dana talked a lot about Quinton Post, and I remember the first time I had a chance to see him play. I was very impressed with his skill set. And what a lot of people don't really understand is that, he has the ability to play from behind the stripe, and he can play within the painted area as well. And one area that I really think that he's really improved on is his ability to score in the post area, in particular from left block to right, using his jump hook over his left shoulder. But then he's also added another tool to the toolbox, which is a jump hook over his right shoulder with his left hand, and which is unique because if you look at most NBA players, bigs, whatnot, they're usually pretty good on one side of the floor, not both sides of the floor. So he's really improving his skill set, and he's also adding another tool to the toolbox. He's able to shoot the ball from the corner threes as well, from the right and left. I do believe his percentage is much higher from the right side corner versus the left side, but that's definitely a weapon that he does have, and it bodes well in this new era of basketball as we see.
Well, and everybody can catch Dr. Joaquin Wallace along with Kevin Dana. Santa Cruz Warriors does a fantastic job. Doc on the color, Kev on the play-by-play. And Doc, I've learned a lot about basketball from you just working with you. It seems like Post is a player that also is kind of a little chippy. He's got a bit of an edge to him. Did you see the confidence that someone like Draymond Green was talking about in training camp and kind of the vocality as far as being willing to talk and just, I don't know, the feel he has for the game, because it was apparent as early as the Sacramento game, even though they lost, and of course on display against the Bulls.
Well, you're going to see Quinton Post play on the Netherlands national team. Let me tell you that right now. I mean, he's that good of a player. But he plays with a flair, a confidence level, and you see it. I mean, he believes he's one of the best players on the floor at the G League level. He definitely brings a skill set that is unique. He likes to block shots. He loves to run the floor. And when he does foul, he lets the officials know about it as well. And he's not afraid to let the player that he did block know that he was there as well. So, I mean, he's a leader. I mean, I love his confidence. And most importantly, I mean, he's a great teammate.
Dr. Joaquin Wallace joining us here, the analyst for the Santa Cruz Warriors. And so, Doc, that's interesting. I had no idea that he had – I just see him as a stretch five and a guy that could shoot it like a lot of people. But you're telling us that he actually has some go-tos out of the pivot, a nice little jump hook with either hand. Where do you see his game going forward as far as an NBA player? Is this a star? Is this a sixth man? How do you project Quinton Post as we think about him 5 years from now?
Well, I think that with an NBA, it's all about fit. And I believe with the right team, he can be a rotational player, or he can be a heavy usage guy as well. But, I want to always say that, my difference between Quinton Post and a lot of players, we talk about the stretch five. Me personally, I always say you have a stretch four, and he's a flex five. And the reason why I call him a flex five, because he can play inside and outside. So he has a different type of skill set versus just a stretch four, because usually a stretch four, that's all they do. They play from behind the stripe. But a flex five, which I identify him as, is that he can play inside the pivot. He can play outside the pivot as well. And if he gets with the right team, he could be a very good player. Now, maybe the Warriors is the right team if they give an opportunity to play, and they're starting to see that as well. He's introducing himself to the Warriors fan and the skills that he brings to the table. The players know about him inside in terms of the Warrior players, but the fans are now just recognizing, hey, who is this guy, Quinton Post? Where do we get this guy from? And he has a unique ability to score. He has the chippiness, as you mentioned, and he's only going to get better. And I think that's what you look at. I always say in college, your biggest year in terms of college basketball is your first year to your second year, right? Well, the same thing can be said in the NBA. It's your first year to the second year. So this off season is going to be very pivotal for him, but he's getting what I call OJT, on the job training right now. So he's learning as we go, and he's going to be much better in the second year.
Well, and it feels like Santa Cruz has helped the Warriors in multiple areas this year, obviously the NBA club, but someone like Guy Santos has also emerged, and I know that he's been someone that's been back and forth between Santa Cruz since being selected in the second round a couple of years ago. It feels like he, along with Post, and Post more recently, they've injected a bit of energy into Golden State, specifically with Guy. Doc, is that a player that does he have any lack of confidence whatsoever? Because it feels like whenever he's on the floor, it's infectious. And it feels like the Warriors, when they've been at their best recently because of injuries and needing him to step up, that infectious energy has been present. Is that something that you saw in Santa Cruz?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at these guys, first and foremost, look at it as when they get a chance to play with the Warriors, they're going to bring a lot of energy because they know they're back and forth in terms of their two-way contract. So they want to show Coach Kerr and the brass that they do belong. So they're going to come with a lot of energy. They're going to inject a lot of enthusiasm, as you mentioned earlier. And that brings a different pulse to the game, a different DNA. And you're starting to see that as well. It's all about confidence. Yes, I have confidence, but I have to play to gain even more confidence. And you're starting to see that as well, as able to knock down 5 threes. I believe that was against the Chicago Bulls. Yeah. So he's getting more confident. And guess what? He's seeing his buddy, his teammate, his running mate, who he's played with as well in the G League. He's playing. So they're looking at one another saying, hey, coach, he can play too. Give me the opportunity. He's showing the brass. I can play as well. We can bring that energy that is required, and whatever we can do to help this team win, we can do that because we want to belong, and we want to show you that we have the youth. We're going to make our mistakes, but guess what? You'd rather have mistakes made in terms of effort versus mistakes made in terms of mental mistakes.
Dr. Wallace joins us. He calls games with the Santa Cruz Warriors, and he knows Quinton Post, I think, before he was really unveiled over the last couple of nights, and certainly knows Guy Santos over the years. So the one thing, and listen, I'm going to be that guy, a fan watching Quinton Post, and I'm going to be somewhat critical, and I want you to sort of set me straight if you feel as though that's it's an ignorant way of sort of analyzing Quinton Post, but I don't see an athlete. And while I could see a guy who can shoot and can make up for some of the fact that he doesn't have the physical tools, but I typically like bigs that jump off the screen at me, that I can just see simply by their gait or by them filling a lane or going up and down the floor. Like that's an athlete. That's somebody that has a future in this league. Convince me otherwise with Quinton Post for a guy who, again, sort of lacks the at least the physical appearance of being somebody that has those physical tools.
I'm going to take you back to the Indiana Pacers. Remember Rick Smith?
Sure.
I mean, he was a Dutchman as well. I mean, really didn't have a lot of athleticism, but one thing he can do is put the ball in the basket. He was extremely fundamental around the rim as well to play on the pivot. But when you look at Quinton Post, the difference between him and Rick Smith, obviously, I mean, he was one of the greatest players ever in the Indiana Pacers. But for the most part, as a rookie, we're talking about a rookie. Yes, he's going to be out-athleted. We know that. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to, the ability to put the ball in the basket. And however you do that, and your skill set brings a different a variety of ways of scoring. So yeah, there's a lot of guys in the NBA, right, that's not as athletic, but they find a way to put the ball in the basket. You have to do the little things. You have to find where you fit. It's like a piece of the puzzle. Where does he fit? He can play the the flex five. So what does that mean? That means on the pick and roll, it opens up the floor, right? You can't play drop coverage because if you do, he can knock you down from behind and strike. And also it gives Steph Curry, those guys, an ability to get downhill because if you play drop coverage, you can give it to him. And he can put the ball on the floor, one dribble pull up as well. So we can't look at them being a non-athlete, so to speak. He can score the basketball in the right situation. He can be a very qualified role player. But again, his biggest jump is going to be from this summer of this year, his first to second year. Again, he's OJT, on the job training. So if you look at it for right now, he's averaging 7 points a game currently with the big club. With the when he was at the G League level, he was averaging 18-8 in the tip-off tournament, 21-7, 42% from behind the arc, 78% from the free throw line, 11.7 rebounds. So he's scoring at 4 levels. Does that translate to the NBA level? Probably not in terms of the points, but he gives you something that you don't have at that 5 position.
Well, one of the reasons I love talking hoop with you is because you also have opinions on, and not just obviously your coverage with the Santa Cruz Warriors, but the league in and of itself, and especially the Western Conference. Where do you think the Warriors are right now? Because a lot of people, I think, have been making out the next couple of weeks towards the deadline as, they got to make a decision, right? They got to either try and lean into a big player, a big splash, or they got to try and just lean into the young guys and, maybe even bottom out and go to the lottery. Where do you see the Warriors right now? And do you think that this is a team that is just kind of staying above water right now? One of the reasons that Post and Santos have helped so much is because Draymond's been out, Kuminga's been out, Podziemski just came back. Where do you see the Warriors in the Western Conference?
Well, let's talk about the Western Conference, right? I mean, it's the most difficult conference. It's a gauntlet every night.
Yeah.
As long as you have Steph Curry, you have an opportunity. And I'm sure that the brass, they're saying, listen, as long as we got Steph, we got to give him a chance to win. But the conference is it's such an impactful conference in terms of players itself. Now, when we talk about the trade deadline, I've always said this. I know I've spoken to you off camera about this as well. One of the things that you have to look at, not every player in terms of paper can fit the system. So when you bring in a player, if you're making that transition to bring someone in the trade deadline, does that person actually fit the system? Because the Warriors run a very unique offense. It's the 5-out motion set with a lot of zoom action as well. But Draymond Green pretty much initiates the offense. And most players in the NBA probably are not comfortable playing in that style of offense because it's a lot of sacrifice cuts that you have to provide, meaning that you may not get the ball. You got to get open so the other guy can get the ball. And most players are not acclimated to that style of offense. So on paper, yes, you can bring the guy over, but does that person actually fit the system? And I'm sure that's something that they're looking at, and that's why probably they're looking more of the G League level because they run the similar style of offense. So they understand the sacrifice cuts. They understand who's initiating the offense. Because if you look at it, it's a very unique offense, right? You look at the Warriors, they run the offense. The Kings run the offense. The Nuggets run the offense. So you look at who are the leading assist people on those offense. Draymond Green, typically, Sabonis with the Kings, the Joker with the Nuggets. Different style of offense. Not everybody can play in that offense. So if you bring someone to the team, it can probably disjoint the offense as well, and they may not be able to execute the way they want to because it's a different style of offense. The Warriors don't run a pick-and-roll style of offense.
Doc, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much for the insight.
Thank you, Doc.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
That's Dr. Wallace. You can hear him calling Warrior games for the Santa Cruz Warriors. Somebody that you're familiar with and a guy that...
Yeah, no, Doc's my dude. Really smart basketball mind, as you heard, for a good 15 minutes there talking about G League players, talking about the West, and just really getting into the nitty-gritty, but has been a head coach at the collegiate level, was lucky enough to do some games with him at St. Mary's over the last couple of years. So I always enjoyed talking to Doc. I mean, that kind of conversation that we just had with him is one that I've had countless times off the air. I just enjoy picking his brain, so glad he was able to
just getting back to Quinton Post.
Yeah.
And again, it has to sort of, like where the Warriors are at right now, you need stars to turn this thing around. Not projects, not good players, but rather stars. And when I think about Quinton Post, I like it, man. How can you not? But he's not ready to be somebody that you can anoint as a stretch five and I love the description by Doc as was it a flex five?
Flex five, yeah.
Yeah, so he can play. I haven't seen the inside out game, which
on the job training.
If he starts to show that he can play out of the pivot, out of the dots, where he's giving you with his back to the basket, like that sort of changes things. We haven't seen that yet, right? We've seen him be able to shoot and be the stretch five because AD tonight's going to have to get out and defend on a Golden State Warrior big, which he has never had to do, I want to say, since he's been a Los Angeles Laker.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, can he actually play with his back to the basket in sort of a traditional way and give me a little jump hook with either hand in the middle of that'll really be sort of a game changer. But again, when I think of the West, is he Chet Holmgren? Is he Alperen Şengün?
No, he's not.
Is he Jaren Jackson?
Jaren Jackson? No, hell no.
Is he Jokic? I'm just going through the centers. Is he AD? Maybe he's Divac. Is he Derek Lively for the Mavericks, who had a rookie center out of Duke last year?
No.
Is he no? And again, it's unfair to the man. But again, when you think about the Warriors, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for star talent right now if you want to get in that conversation. Not somebody who's a 57th pick that hit a couple of jump shots against the Chicago Bulls. He could be a player that you can plug in and be serviceable.
Yeah.
But you're looking for somebody that's going to be impactful, if not sort of that generational type. That's the sort of, box that they've painted themselves into, the corner that they painted themselves into at this point.
Yeah, but those players don't grow on trees. It's not like you can just go out and acquire one.
But you have to take a swing for one.
Well, they have taken swings, and they've missed. James Wiseman was a swing. Jonathan Kuminga looks like he's a player, but that was a swing. Moses Moody, to some extent, I know a lot of people don't think about him as a project player, but he was a one and done. He was 19 years old when he got drafted. Those are all swings. They haven't hit on them, at least not to the point where you can legitimately see.
Well, there's a difference between, let me just sorry to interrupt, clarify between a swing and missing on a draft pick. Like they didn't draft well.
Yeah, but they didn't draft well, I believe, because they were trying to hit. You're basically throwing a dart at the board. You're throwing a lot of darts at the board and hoping that one of them becomes a bullseye. as opposed to trying to figure out what player, to Doc's point, fits. I don't think the Warriors drafted Wiseman, Kuminga, to some extent Moody, for fit. I think they drafted them because they thought that they were uber talented. And that is going to happen when you're not drafting for your system. And that's where I do agree with a lot of people that have called in or texted in or on YouTube. That one of the criticisms about Kerr, which I think is fair, is that it is very difficult for a player that can't play that style to really get run, but also just be featured. Like he's a little rigid, and to be fair, he's got 4 championships as a result of it. But I think that the Warriors have to figure out what Kerr and his future is going to be in Golden State if they're going to try and swing again for a project-type player, a talented-type player in the draft.
Something I do want to get into, and it gets bantered about. We even talked about it this morning. It might have been the last segment. And I think you mentioned this. That Stephen Curry, rather, is untouchable.
I think so, at least for now.
I agree with you. But I'm beginning to, again, I don't want to go there.
Oh, boy.
But I do think that if things get drastic, you don't have a lot of assets. And if this is about winning basketball games, you have to at least, well, let me just throw this at you. If I'm Orlando.
I'm ready to hit.
And I call you up.
Yeah.
And I say, I'm going to give you some young pieces, and I'm going to give you 4 first-round picks. Paul George netted, 5 for OKC. Now, the $63 million in the second apron, it's tough to trade anybody, especially if you're Steph Curry.
Sure.
But do you not, if you're Dunleavy or if you're Evan Giddings as the new GM of the Golden State Warriors, do you not owe it to yourself and the team to at least listen to what it is Orlando's selling you?
Yeah, 100%. I think you have to have everything on the table. Like, that's one of the reasons why the Warriors are in the position they are. It's because they haven't, I think, been open to everything. They've been kind of siloed into their way, which, again, has produced 4 championships in 10 years. They're not that team anymore. They're not a contender, and so they have to recalibrate. And I personally don't think that involves trading Steph Curry. But whereas 2 years ago, someone doesn't even pick up the phone or doesn't even pick up the phone to call you about Curry, I absolutely think there are teams this summer, franchises, front offices, that are going to call Mike Dunleavy Jr. and ask, is Steph available? And the remainder of this season will determine how long that conversation actually goes. Because that's clearly the quickest way to kickstart a rebuild. But I also don't believe that it's a conversation that you can have unless Curry actually brings it up himself. And from now until
that's okay.
April 1st.
Go ahead.
No, we got to hit a breaker. We can talk about it on the other side. But the remainder of this season, I think, is going to also tell me how much Steph really wants to try and get that 5th ring.
Well, I'm not talking about, I think we're talking about 2 different things. I'm not talking about Steph Curry's demands.
Well,
I'm talking
you can only trade him if he asks for it.
Well, that's a different conversation. I'm saying if Orlando calls you out of, he doesn't want to go to Orlando, I wouldn't think. But if somebody calls you and says, look, I'm willing to give you X, Y, and Z, and it's a boatload, do you not owe it to yourself to listen to? Remove Steph Curry and his request from the equation. Those are 2 separate conversations. It's not doing what it is that Steph wants to do because, well, we can continue this conversation on the other side. But it's fascinating because I'm just saying it's something that we should at least talk about, and we will. Evan Giddings, Dan Avone, 95.7 The Game continues after this.
You know what? Let's throw a party this year for the big game.
Hey, we can invite our friends over.
Steph Curry and the Warriors take on the Los Angeles Lakers coming up tonight, a nationally televised game. Are you into rivalry week there, Ev?
What the hell is rivalry week?
It's the Warriors taking on their nemesis from down south, the Los Angeles Lakers. Hi again, everybody.
Are they? They're going to go into your NFL Films voice. Are they rivals with the Bulls?
Sacramento.
That's true. I think that's a rivalry. We had a lot of people saying that it's not, but I think there's a rivalry there. I mean, at least for the fans, I remember a couple nights ago, Risotto was actually in Sacramento. I feel like Steve would be able to weigh in on this. Steve, do you feel like, was there a rivalry kind of energy in the building on Wednesday?
Yes, and if it's not a rivalry, it's only because Golden State fans don't think so. But Kings fans, like, they're there on it. Like, they're 100% there.
I totally agree. A lot of my friends were talking about, I'm still afraid of Steph, and they're scarred from the 50-point Game 7 a couple of years ago in the first round. I think they really enjoyed knocking the Warriors out of the play-in last year. Yeah, I think there's, I don't know if there's bad blood between the players, but I think the fans are into it.
Hey, I saw a beam though. I saw my first beam. They lit the beam, and I
how was it?
Light that beam.
15 minutes in all.
The coolest gimmick in sports.
Hey, Pasta, what do you do after a game in Sacramento? Like, where do people go? Can you go get a drink?
Dude, Old Town. It's right there.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a bunch of stuff in that area. Old Town's right down there. The Capitol. Now, I'm not going to go to the Capitol, but they got a bunch of stuff down there in that area. And after that game, I went home, man. After waiting for Steph Curry, he always kind of takes some time with his post-game presser. And, I went home. It was late. I had to be here the next morning.
Yeah, Pasta was actually helping me the next day. It was like, dude, you probably got in at like, what, 1 a.m.?
12:45.
Oh, my God.
Mark's hanging out in San Francisco, California. Wants to talk about the Warriors in chemistry. Hey, Mark.
Yeah, as much as talent, gentlemen, I think chemistry is what you have to look at. And if you look at what Quinton Post brings, he really, opens up the floor for some of the skills of the other players on this team. And I think chemistry is just as important as talent. You got to get the right guys fitting. And I think he brings a lot of that. And that's why I'm really excited about him and a lot of the young players on the Warriors.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I think
I'm just not as excited as everybody else.
Well, again, it's. I think with the way that they've been playing, it's a breath of fresh air, right?
Oh, no doubt.
And it's something different. I think that's one of the reasons why it's been hard for Warriors fans, at least the ones that I've talked to get on board with this team when they were middling. It's because there wasn't even a flash of somebody young, because Kuminga got hurt, Pajemski got hurt, Moody wasn't getting run. Now at the very least, there's something to watch that you could project down the line. Curry is the all-time entertainer, but he's getting worse. He's not improving because he's 36 years old. Draymond Green is clearly not getting better as a basketball player. So the fact that the Warriors have been losing games and stuck around 500 for a bit, combined with, well, what do I have to look forward to? That's where I think a lot of fans have been resigned to that kind of dark place, whereas now, is post-Dirk Nowitzki? Hell no. But he's something fresh. He's something new. And the Warriors kind of need a facelift, even if it's a small one.
I agree with you. You couldn't. Perfectly well said, Evan.
Thank you, Dan. Now, I got to ask you.
Now you're going to screw it up. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to rip you. No, I'm not. I'm just kidding. But I do think we have to figure out where they go from here, because it could all come crashing down tonight, right? I mean, again, the Lakers just beat the Celtics by 20. A team that beat you by 40 on Monday.
The Celtics were at the back end of a long road trip, overtime games. I mean, I'm not making excuses for Boston, but
no, but they clearly cared about the MLK Day game. I'm not saying they cared on Thursday. The Celtics have just been sleepwalking, but I think they woke up because, well, they were trying to beat the Warriors in what has become just an annual Beantown beatdown that they hand in Boston or Golden State, wherever. But tonight. There's going to be juice. And I know for a fact that this game is already sold out. There's no comp tickets left. Every seat will be filled. There is juice in Chase Center tonight. So it's a big game. There's not a lot of games over the course of the season now that I think, all right, we have LeBron and AD against Steph. There's star power. Saturday night, everyone's watching. I I think it is a big game for the Warriors. It's a really good test for them.
Yeah. And it's going to be all eyes on Quinton Post, I think. And it's going to be fun to see this new toy that the Warriors have to roll out against specifically the Lakers and Anthony Davis. Because Anthony Davis has never, as I mentioned, had to extend on a Warrior opponent since he's been a Los Angeles Laker. You're certainly not going out to guard TJD or Kevon Looney or Draymond Green, but tonight it'll be interesting.
Do you think they're kind of in the same place as franchises?
Yeah, very similar.
The Warriors and the Lakers.
Very, very similar. Very similar. They're both teams that are older.
Yeah.
And they're both teams that have limited talent as far as their current roster construction.
The one thing that the Lakers do have an advantage in is being a destination. I mean, they're always a team that is in the mix for free agents or for big name trades.
Not as much as the Dodgers, but I get your point.
Don't talk about that.
Yeah, that one's going to cut Rizzy to the core because he's a big Giants fan. By the way, who cares? Spend as much money as you want. I don't mind. Break the game. Why not?
It's exactly what they're doing. The imbalance is like baseball can't continue down that road.
So you think there's eventually going to be like a NBA salary cap?
I think so.
I don't think so. Because that's not the way baseball operates. Like basketball is, if anything, well, we are starting to see a shift in both sports. The second apron era is, I don't really know if I like it, to be honest, Dan.
No.
Because I don't think it encourages the one thing that made the NBA unique for the better part of 15 years, which is player movement.
Yeah.
It makes it really difficult.
Still limiting.
So like before the break, you brought up Curry, right? And while people might think it's sacrilegious, I do think there's a conversation to be had, depending on how the rest of the season goes, about Curry and his future. What could the Warriors get for him, all the rest? But just logistically, because of the second apron or the first apron, whatever you're trying to be under, acquiring a $60 million player is such an arduous task. Like, just fundamentally getting that trade done is so damn difficult because of the new CBA that I don't think there is going to be a bunch of big players on the move this summer the way there seemingly was every single offseason. The best part about the NBA, damn near every single year, is the fact that it can remain relevant in the offseason. And we're going to hear about rumors and the Warriors being attached to whatever the new version of Paul George or Lauri Markkanen is. But the idea of a big-name superstar leaving and going somewhere else, it's just so difficult to do now.
I agree with you. I do want to discuss, again, well, they want to discourage the high salary spending on players.
Yeah.
And so I think if you were to revisit the league a couple of years ago, it was getting a little one-sided.
Well, I think they were trying to prevent what the Dodgers are doing, which is basically if you can foot the luxury tax bill, you can go get whoever you want. Or keep whoever you want.
I want to revisit Steph Curry again. All right? Here's an $8,000 suit. Put it on.
Never had one of those.
Let me get you some hair gel.
Okay.
Because it's a requirement if you're going to be GM. You got to slick it back. I think Pat Riley started that back in the day.
By the way,
I know. You don't like Riley.
He's jumped the shark.
You're a Jimmy Butler guy?
Yeah. Yeah, I am.
Okay, wait. I think you're misusing Jump the Shark. Because I think I had to tell you where that arrived from, Jump the Shark.
Yeah, from the
Happy Days.
The Fonz.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Jumping the Shark is being over the hill, right?
No.
Jumping the Shark is you're no longer...
It means you've lost your edge.
Okay, then I think I used it properly.
Well,
I think Pat Riley's lost his edge.
Here's a good example is that when Howard Stern, who was all about edge when you listen to his radio show, when he went to The Voice and became television, he had jumped the shark, a lot of people felt. That he was like if Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports suddenly becomes somebody that is more mainstream, he would have jumped the shark because he's looking to get commercialized so he can make more money. Happy Days was like Fonz. They got to the point where they were like trying to appease everybody with him. I mean, the guy was like...
And they did some ridiculous stuff.
He was like a hood with a leather jacket was his persona, and then all of a sudden he's literally jumping a shark in Los Angeles, going off a ramp, off a ski boat. Like, well, how did we get here? And it's because it was at the end of their run as a sitcom or as a television drama, and they were trying to appease an entirely different audience. So
I also think that someone like Pat Riley is coming to an end of being the leader of a successful organization. The Miami Heat are a middling franchise right now. I mean, they've only been successful when Jimmy Butler has helped them recently, when he's been the key figure, and now he wants out. I don't know if he's going to help Phoenix, which it looks like is the place that he's going to go, but Pat Riley, I know it's all about money and there's a disagreement. And I'm not trying to by any means make excuses for how he's acting, but trying to fight fire with fire is not going to get the job done. Like Pat Riley should have known that this was a player that you're going to have to try and extinguish and placate to, but that's not who he is.
Well, Pat Riley's living in a different era. It's a players' league now. Players will go where it is that they want to go, especially if you're Jimmy Butler. And why Phoenix? You want to go after Pat Riley. What the hell is Phoenix thinking?
I don't know if there's an example for this, but like, all right, you're at, I don't know, some blackjack table. You're in deep with the Sharks, right? You got a lot of money you owe, and you're trying to win it back. Suns are just continuing to double down. Like, well, we're going to get killed, or they're going to take a hand, whatever loan shark that I own a lot of money to. They're going to take a pound of flesh from me anyways. So the least I can do is try and win it all back. And if I can't, I'll just stay at the table until they tell me to leave, and I got to go meet my eventual demise anyways. Like Jimmy Butler, I don't think catapults them into contention, but he's something different, Like they traded an unprotected first for 3 firsts, I am assuming to go then and use to acquire Butler. And why not? Like, you don't have any of your picks till 2030 anyways. You might as well just sacrifice the 2031 one.
Would you be surprised if Kevin Durant gets up and gets the hell out of there this offseason? You got to. Really? Yeah.
Oh, no, it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It also wouldn't surprise me if the Warriors made some calls to Matt Ishbia and the Phoenix Suns about Kevin Durant.
Oh, God.
That's something we're going to hear, dude.
I know. We heard it last offseason.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was as much about, like, I don't know if it was legitimately realistic, but.
You can't go back, man. You cannot go back. You cannot reverse the clock and go back to 2016.
Why not? They tried it in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Remember when he was running the car in reverse to try and reverse the odometer?
Yes. Great show, by the way.
You can do it. Doesn't mean it's going to work.
What's your favorite line from a movie?
My favorite line from a movie?
Ferris Bueller's?
Oh, my God.
What was Ferris Bueller's? What was the line that woman had? He's a really hip dude? Or what?
Oh, Ferris. Well, Charlie Sheen probably is my favorite character in that movie. He was the greaseball at the office that Ferris's sister Jeannie runs into and falls in love with at first sight. But
give me your favorite line from a movie. It's hard.
From one movie?
Yeah, if you give me one that jumps into your head.
Oh my God. Well, from Ferris Bueller, it'll be when Cameron's doing the crank call to Mr. Roney. Well, pardon my French, Mr. Roney, but you're an a-hole. I love that line. Boy. And he's on the phone faking like he's the dad.
I think I loved you more recreating it. Let me see. What could I'll give you one when we get back into the Warriors.
Got to be. So one of my favorite movies is John Wick. And when they're telling the story about Baba Yaga, the boogeyman, right? The Russian mobster is describing a scene of John Wick to impress upon his son just how badly he's effed up. And he looks at him and he goes, I once saw Mr. Wick kill 3 men with a pencil. With a bleeping pencil. And he did there's something about it that I just absolutely love.
That's strong.
Yeah. With a bleeping pencil.
What can I? All right, I got one for you.
You just asked me the question. What do you got?
I got one for you. Because I saw this recently. I don't know if you remember A Few Good Men. So Tom Cruise, 2 Hall of Famers, Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson in a courtroom drama. And Tom Cruise is cross-examining the legend Jack Nicholson in the climactic scene. Did you order the code red? I did what I had to do. Did you order the code red? You're goddamn right I did.
That is really good. Another Tom Cruise movie, which I do love, Jerry Maguire. Show me the money, Jerry. Yeah. Show me the money. Oh, my God.
All right. What the hell? Oh, I went here because we were Pat Riley and you need to slick your hair back and get a $10,000 suit. So you're the GM of the Golden State Warriors.
Yep. Back on track.
Now, you don't have the consent of Steph Curry. You haven't had a conversation with Steph Curry. I'm just calling you up. And I'm OKC. Now, OKC doesn't.
They got a freaking treasure chest is what they got.
You know, they still have.
Yeah.
They still have picks from the Paul George trade.
Dude, they're 2030 or something like that. They also, I think, own Philadelphia's pick this year, which is looking like it's going to be a really good pick because they stink.
Unfair. Okay, I'll use Orlando because we need a shooter, all right? And so, unbeknownst to Steph Curry, he's not privy to any of this. I call you up as the GM of the Golden State Warriors, and I'm like, hey, listen, I got some couple of young players that are up and coming, and I'm going to give you 4 first-round draft picks. Are you listening to that? Are you entertaining that? Are you going back to Steve Kerr and saying, what do you want to do?
Hit me that.
Or are you hanging up on him?
Hit me with that trade again.
Well, I'm trying to think of the players that they can move so I can get into Orlando's roster.
Well, so to me, if you are to make a big trade that is moving down the road that you want, Dan Devone, which is to kind of reset this thing, then I'm prioritizing picks over players. Like, give me whoever you want. I'll take expirings. I'll take toxic contracts. I'll take whoever you want, but I need your best picks. So someone like Orlando is actually not a team that I would trade with because odds are they're going to be pretty good for an extended period of time because their best players are 21 and 22. OKC, similar. But the difference between OKC and Orlando is OKC has access to Houston's draft picks.
Yeah, I want to see Orlando has.
I think they have access. Well, they obviously have access to Philly's draft picks. They've acquired other teams, maybe even Phoenix. Oh, yeah, no, they do have some Phoenix picks because of the Chris Paul deal from a couple years back. So, like, those are the picks that I want, in addition to keeping mine. I'm not really interested in Orlando's. A team that I would like to trade with to acquire picks, but they probably wouldn't want to. Like, if at the deadline, someone brought up Ben Simmons. If the Warriors could get Ben Simmons, if they decided like they want to tank, if they want to just lean into losing, which I don't think they will, but one way to do that was give me Ben Simmons' contract and attach a first-round pick. Like, that's a way that you can try and, I think, acquire some future capital. And it wouldn't be this season. It would be like kind of similar to how they did with Jordan Poole. Like, they attached with Poole, I think a protected, I don't know if it was heavily protected or lightly protected, but a protected first-round pick to go to Washington. So come 2030, Washington might have access to that pick.
Okay, but just getting back specifically, because you're dancing around Steph Curry, would you trade Steph Curry? And I don't know who the team is.
Sure.
I'm theorizing here.
Yeah.
And get first-round picks in the near future. And I'm talking about high picks.
No, I wouldn't.
And your reasoning is?
Because I don't think the Warriors are going to be very good, even maybe the last couple of years, however long Curry lasts. So I think their own picks are going to be pretty good. And to me, the value of Curry being a Golden State Warrior for the entirety of his career is more valuable than taking a couple of big home run swings and watching him fade into the sunset somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm really on the fence with this.
It's not an easy conversation to have, but it's something they'll have to broach. Like, Because I don't think the Warriors are headed towards
But not
winning a
according to
playoffs.
Steve Kerr. Remember, Steve Kerr's like, there's no way.
But I think that was more about Curry asking for a trade. Because what we're describing is the front office basically saying, Steph, God love you, but we have a chance here to really rebuild this thing.
Can't send him to Orlando. That'd be so unfair.
Well, what if Orlando's a contender?
Still, you would like him to go to a place that he signs off on.
Yeah. I mean, no, you can't treat Curry like, oh gosh, like the Miami Heat are trying to treat Jimmy Butler. you can't do that. But I think that the hypotheticals, like that noise is going to get louder. And I actually think it's going to get pretty loud around February 16th, which is the All-Star game, because it's in Curry's backyard. It's his house. All lights are going to be on him. And he's going to have to answer a lot of questions from a lot of both national and international media about what the remainder of his future is. I mean, he's the one that's on record this summer saying, I don't want to play for a bottom feeder. And God love Golden State. They look closer to a bottom feeder than a contender this season.
You know, this happened, I think I've told you this story, my first year in Seattle. The general manager was Buzz Bavasi, I think Jr., and he held
what a name.
His dad was a legendary guy who I want to say was a GM president or with the Brooklyn Dodgers going way back or his grandfather. He came from a strong line of baseball people from back east. And anyways, Buzz Bavasi calls this press conference, right? This wasn't just something that he just sort of shot from his hip. He had this formal press conference. I remember it was one of the first press conferences I ever went to, down at what was then Safeco Field.
Mm-hmm.
And he said this declaration that we are not trading Edgar Martinez. We are not trading Dan Wilson. We are not trading John Olerud. Now, this was after they had won, those 116 games and were still good, but they were sort of like where the Warriors are at. Well, no, the Warriors are much further along in terms of not being good, but you could see that the core was aging.
Like Edgar would have been in his mid-30s.
And so he was saying they're synonymous with Seattle and the rebuild, and these players are more than just, baseball players. They're part of the fabric that is the community. The Seattle Mariners up until last year went nearly 2 decades without being good or getting to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And my point in all of that is that sometimes you have to check emotion and sentimentality at the door. So much like that as Steve Kerr saying there's no way Steph Curry is being traded or the idea that he's hands off, I get it. And the older I get, the more I begin to understand that, let's think about the human component factoring into a lot of this and the goodwill in terms of how we treat people, especially someone like that as Steph Curry. But at the same time, if your bottom line as a ruthless sort of business tycoon, we got to get to a break, is to win, and if that's all you're about is winning, and that pretty much summarizes, I think, the majority of Dub Nation and every fan base, don't you have to consider it? And we have to, take your response on the other side, but I'll let you tease it.
If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you might just miss it.
Is that the lyrics from a song?
Ferris Bueller. 707. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, we can just chew on that for the next minute and a half.
I'll answer you. Well, we got to take a break here. I was trying to send it off on a high note.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do for a minute and a half. We're going to chew on what it is you just said. We'll be back. Okay, we'll wrap up the show right after this on Warriors This Week.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top rated?
Happy days.
Pasta.
Pasta.
Steven Risotto. That is A1 producing right there.
A few good men.
Over Happy Days.
Yes. Happy days.
He's a righteous dude. That was the line you were looking for earlier.
Yeah. I told you the woman who delivered that, she wanted to get compensated for it because it was not in the script. And she ad-libbed it and felt as though, hey, listen, man, there's an iconic line. I need to get some more money.
There's a lot of those like kind of mythical stories. Some are true, some aren't. The one that I always remember, I think it was Sylvester Stallone, where he had to sell his dog in order to provide enough money to make Rocky.
Yeah, I heard that. Which he made in Midtown Manhattan, a little studio is where he wrote that thing.
Yeah, he wrote it like in a few days. But then the moment that he got the cash back for the movie, the first thing he did was go buy his dog back. Like, I could not imagine and I don't have a dog, but if I had to sell my dog, that would tear my soul apart. Sell your best friend?
By the way, there's supposed to be an Avatar 3 coming out.
What?
Yeah.
There's a second?
Oh, wait, or is it Avatar 2?
Well, Avatar 2 I think is out.
And it's Avatar 3.
Oh, my God. Dude, all right, speaking of
let me look
Camerons,
this up.
James Cameron's got to pump the brakes. He's like Pat Riley. By the way, a lot of people chiming in on the text line, YouTube chat. People
Avatar
texting
3.
me.
Fire and Ash.
Yeah, I did use Jump the Shark correctly. James Cameron's Jumped the Shark. How about that?
Okay, what are they saying about Jump the Shark?
I don't know. They just said I'm right and you're wrong. But we gotta figure this thing out, Dan. All right, what are you looking forward to tonight at Chase Center?
What am I looking forward to?
Quinton Post.
Yeah, I want to see Quinton Post continue. I
love the
it.
guy, but my God.
I love it. It's fun.
He's the biggest billing in a game with LeBron, AD, and Steph.
It's so much fun having this guy, and especially his background and the fact that he's not a 2-guard or a wing, but a 7'1" dude. You just don't see a lot of those guys in Warrior uniforms.
Yeah.
Going way back in the day. Way back in the day. You know what I happened to see on YouTube on a flight recently? Sometimes, if you're looking at something over an extended period of time, and then you go on YouTube, it'll give you videos, suggested videos. It's all done through algorithms.
Sure.
And for some reason, I got into like these 1970 NBA games, and it was Robert Parrish's rookie year with the Golden State Warriors before he, of course, became part of that legendary front line with the Boston Celtics. And when you think about Robert Parrish, he's like one of the few 7-footers going back to the 1970s that the Warriors have ever had. Like Bogut, they're few and far between. So anytime a Quinton Post comes out of nowhere and starts doing what he's doing, people like me sit up and take notice. Like, holy crap, that's a 7-footer that's doing that. So yeah, my eyes are on this guy to see if he can continue and keep it rolling for another game against AD of all people.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just take the easy pick. I'm looking for Steph tonight. Steph's got to have a big game. Like, actually, the season high for Steph, 38 points, came against the Lakers last time they played them. And remember, they lost, even though Steph dragged them back, gave them, I don't know if it was the lead or a tie, but Reeves had that last-second layup where it blew by Wiggins and Kuminga was lost in the baseline.
Christmas Day.
Yep. That was a great game.
Yeah.
These teams always put together a show. And I believe it was last year at Chase Center was the double overtime loss. These are all losses for the Warriors, which suck. But it doesn't mean that they don't put together awesome performances. And in a regular season, like, I don't know. Do you feel like one of the reasons why they have to build this game up is, the Quinton Post game. But the Curry versus LeBron is because, like, this is what the NBA has left. The young superstars are not as magnetic as the old ones. And maybe that's also the reason why those names are floated around trade rumors is because they do numbers. Zion Williamson being on the block, he's a great young talent. He could potentially change a franchise if he could ever stay healthy. But it's like his name doesn't move the needle like Jimmy Butler does. And Jimmy Butler's over the hill.
Yeah. Well, I brought this up to you a couple of months ago, or about a month ago, that the NBA does not have all their American stars are over the age of 35. And the only star player under the age of 30 is in the WNBA, and her name's Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
And that's an issue. That's an issue, I think, for the NBA. You know, one guy I just want to talk about is Buddy Hield.
Well, real quick, to your point, the highest selling jerseys are still Curry, LeBron, Durant. Like, they're all starting in the All-Star game, but they also got a lot of gray hairs. Or if you're Kevin Durant, you got a little bald spot. That's
the consumer base. It's like, it's not an indictment that people are being nationalistic and can't recognize the talents of Wembanyama or the Joker. It's just identifiability, right? That's all it is. I'm dealing with this on a completely different project, part of a promotional team out of New York City, and we're sort of in this MMA combat sport, and one of the things that we have is Muay Thai boxing, which is highly, highly entertaining.
Yeah.
But I'm an advocate, and I have to be very careful how I approach this, is that we have to change the name, because it's not something that the United States consumer base is going to be able to buy into. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with bare knuckle fighting, which to me, it's way too brutal for me, but bare knuckle fighting, like the bare knuckle fighting championship, it's the new thing in terms of combat sport. It's on the heels of UFC in terms of its popularity. A lot of it's just simply the name in and of itself. Bare knuckle fighting is about as Americana and goes back centuries, as opposed to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's since we were talking about movies earlier, Snatch is about bare knuckle boxing. It's one of my favorite movies. Yeah. Machine Gun, what's his name?
The Gypsies?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And Brad Pitt just takes a bunch of blows.
Brad Pitt was awesome.
He's incredible in that movie. Jason Statham. Anyways.
Right, so I want to get in throwing a little Buddy Love here before.
Shavano.
Yeah.
He didn't shoot it well against Chicago, though.
He didn't play well. You know, Buddy Hield is interesting. Buddy Hield, to me, is emblematic of where the Warriors are at.
Yeah.
Because you never saw players like Buddy Hield on Warrior rosters and or Dennis Schroeder. And this is what I mean. This is the evolution and sort of where we've arrived at when it comes to the Warriors. The Warriors back in, was it 2016, arguably the greatest starting lineup in the history of the sport. Maybe the Chicago Bulls, the only other team that could rival it with Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman and company. But the Warriors with the Splash Brothers, Durant and Draymond, everybody in their prime might have been the greatest starting lineup. And even since then, it's still the Splash Brothers, but they got a little bit older. It was still Draymond. You had the foundation. It was Kevon Looney, who won an NBA championship and was so pivotal against the Celtics. And then it was, there was Andrew Wiggins, who was also had an MVP type performance. And so they were just, we knew who they were, and they were these, these players that sort of were on a completely different level. But maybe that, the door was open when they got rid of Klay Thompson, and now we have guys like Buddy Hield on the team that are integral parts. Since when do you use Sacramento's refuge, or a guy that couldn't get off the bench with Philadelphia, or Dennis Schroeder, who is the definition of a journeyman? Suddenly the Warriors are that team. They used to be this fortress where the Buddy Hields of the world, you're a good player, but you're not allowed over here. Like, you can't come in here. We're the Warriors, for crying out loud. But now I think that he's emblematic in that it's a sign to everybody that the Warriors are no longer that team. They're no longer part of the top tier, that they are clearly part of the middling, the average basketball teams when Buddy Hield becomes an integral part of your roster.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why the construction of the roster is problematic. It's because you're an injury or two away, and unfortunately the Melton one is probably the biggest one in regards to Hield, but you're an injury or two away from needing Buddy Hield to start. And when Buddy Hield starts, I think he's symbolic for the way their season's gone. When he scores 18 or more points, they're 10-0. Do the math for when he doesn't score 18 points. You can't count on him to get you 18 points a game on an efficient clip every single night. That's why I thought he was a good option to replace Klay, because Klay had become pretty volatile as far as a score. Now, he means more to the fabric of the Warriors and has definitely more of a built-in base. But Klay Thompson the last couple of years, really last year, he would have a game where he would go 6 for 8 and 1 for 8. There weren't as many 3 for 8s, 4 for 8s. That's the same for Buddy Hield. Like, the performances are just on such a wide spectrum that it's impossible to know what you're going to expect from him. Same for Dennis Schroeder. I didn't think he fit in the first place. I recognized that they needed a player and they got him, but like he's in terms of plus minus, like he's legitimately been their worst player since they acquired him. So you're right that the Warriors don't have players that A, fit, and B, are relied upon way too much. But it's also because there's not as much top-end talent on this team. You know, when they had, even before Durant came, Steph, Klay, Dre, okay, Iguodala, right? I mean, Leandro Barbosa was a journeyman, a gunner. He spent a long time in Phoenix, but after that, you know, trying to figure things out. Sean Livingston dealt with a lot of early injuries in his career. He played for a lot of different teams. They got him cheaply from Brooklyn. But those are players that didn't have to play out of their role. I think that's why, to your point, Dan, there's a lack of identity with this team. There are too many players that are a 6 or a 7 on like a good roster that have to on some nights be a 2 or a 3. And that's where you really run into trouble relying on guys that have to do too much. And the Warriors of old, you could plug and play Zaza. You could plug and play JaVale McGee. You could even bring in Boogie Cousins. Like, you could Jordan Bell, Patrick McCaw, Quinn Cook. These are all players that, after Cousins, the ones that I named, they're not like big name guys. But imagine if Quinn Cook had to be your starting point guard. Like, you wouldn't be a very good basketball team. And that's kind of where they are.
What's the over and under tonight for your man Quinton Post? How many points is he getting against Anthony Davis and the Los Angeles Lakers?
Ooh. How many points is he scoring?
I'll give you 12. Is he over or under?
So he's making 4 threes?
Oh, 12 points. I don't know how he arrives at it. According to...
Well, he's going to be shooting threes.
Well, the doc says he's got an inside game that apparently he could unveil tonight. Let's see.
And I would love to see it.
Oh, man, if he throws out a jump hook tonight, I'll scream Doc's name to the heavens no matter where I'm at.
I think 12 is a good number. If we're setting it at 11.5 for Quinton Post.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying this. You're leaning over. You think he's getting over 11.5 points.
I do, yeah.
I think I would lead under tonight. I think this is a tough matchup. Well, just the size, like the physical presence of the Lakers, I think is going to demand them to play a little more towards their traditional centers.
I'm caught up in it, man.
But you said that he's not going to save the season.
He's not. It's just a sideshow.
Quinton Mania.
It's sort of like Buddy Hield the first week of the season. It's sort of like when Jonathan Kuminga has it going for a couple of weeks. It's not sustainable. It's not something to build off of. These aren't foundational pieces. And that's the misinterpretation here. Is a lot of Warrior fans think that, we found a guy and this is how we're going to win in the future. It's not. It's not at all. But live in the here and now, and as of tonight, I think it's going to be fun.
Well, it should be. And again, it's going to be a packed crowd. One thing that I love going to games, and I love doing pre and post from Chase Center because you can really feel the energy. Thank you. Steve's going to be in the building tonight.
How you guys go? Someone throw me a ticket. I'd like to go, or 2
Well, we're
tickets.
not going with tickets.
Well, I want tickets. I need a press pass.
Well, first I'll get you a ticket, then I'll get you into the All-Star parties in a couple weeks.
Are you working on that, by the way?
Saturday night.
What do you mean? Where are we going?
Well, I don't know yet. It's undisclosed location. I'm not going to tell you on the air where we're going. I just know a guy that knows a guy who knows a guy that's going to be able to take us somewhere.
I'll take it.
It might be on the other side of the bridge, though, so you might have to bring your passport.
Oh, come on. Nothing's happening on the other side of the
bridge. What are you talking about?
It's
Oaktown
got to be in the city.
Is big time.
Listen, the NBA All-Star Game is played in San Francisco. All the Super Bowl parties, when the Super Bowl went off at Levi, were all in San Francisco. Super Bowl parties when the Super Bowl was in Stanford, for crying out loud, everything's in San Francisco. It's not happening in the East Bay.
You do know that there's a lot of legendary ballers from the other side of the bridge.
Mosswood Park, man.
Yeah, but Oaktown's big time. We got a lot of guys coming in that are going to be throwing some shindigs.
But not in Oakland.
I need you to be open to the possibility of us being in the hills at a ritzy place.
Oh, the hills. Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, Temescal. All right, Montclair.
All right.
Yeah, I'm talking above 580, brother.
All right.
Well, I hope. I'm not gonna lie. This is not a 100% thing. We on All-Star
Weekend.
Weekend
Going to the Hofbrau on the Hagenberger. So
yeah, well,
My
no,
bad.
I'm not gonna take you to what's the chicken joint off Broadway? But it's really good. Might be Hot Ones, but no, we're not going to be down by 19th Street.
All right.
But I also
Which, by the
can't
way,
guarantee.
I can roll down there as well, man. I got street cred, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, but you got to get back to the other side of the bridge before midnight, and we're going to be out late, you and I. Bring some coffee. Well, though, but you got to wake up early though, because just like today, you got to get up and get in the ocean. Dude, like Dan's been swimming. I don't think people understand. Dan Avone's been swimming. How many miles you logged so far this year? Because you got to get to 50, right?
Yeah, I'm at like not even at late teens, so it's going to be a slog to try and get there.
But swimming a mile in the ocean is not. How do you even track it? Do you wear a device or something?
Well, they have measuring. So there's buoys, there's courses.
Okay.
That you can measure your distance
like
by.
mini golf.
Well, kind of. Like within the cove, there are, I'd say, maybe 75 different courses that you can actually swim to the pier, you can swim to the flag, you can swim to the breakers, and all of them have a mileage attached to that.
You got enough juice to get me into one of these places?
To the Dolphin Club, just show up, man. Just show up in shorts and a pot belly, and you're in.
Well, but I might need a wetsuit, or are those frowned upon?
You can't wear a wetsuit.
Is that like
you can't? So if you wanted, so during what we're talking about is during the winter solstice, it's called the polar bear, and in order to swim the 50 miles, you cannot be recognized for swimming 50 miles in the coldest months of the year, or 40 miles during the coldest months of the year, if you're wearing a wetsuit.
Well, I'm already under the weather, Dan. I need some warmth.
It's the best remedy, man.
You're asking me to hibernate, essentially.
Asking you to catch pneumonia.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, I show up in a wetsuit. Is that like making a divot on a green on a golf course?
You know who showed up in a wetsuit?
Who?
For the first month? Until they literally had to pin him down like a pledge.
Lombardi?
And remove it from... Yes.
David Lombardi?
Yeah, I didn't want to throw out the name of David Lombardi,
well,
the athletic
you didn't
son.
have to confirm it, but I knew who it was.
Formally.
Colder than a polar bear's toenails. Thank you, Uncle Loon. Yeah, shout out to our YouTube chat. Shout out to all of our texters, everyone that's called in today.
So you're going
under.
under.
A lot of fun.
You're going under tonight with your man, Quinton Post?
Sorry, what?
You're going under 11.5.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a difficult matchup tonight. And, dude, like, scoring 20 points in the NBA is not an easy task. I know he made it look like it because he was butt naked open from the 3-point line. But
okay, how's this?
If he takes 10 threes in this game, I would be shocked. Because I know that he's not Dirk, but he's on the scouting report. Everyone knows that this guy is a shooter now. And so what I think that Post is going to do tonight, while he himself might not score a lot, he's going to open things up for others. Like, that's where I think his biggest strength for this team lies. Yeah, he can make a three-pointer and is certainly a threat, but he demands you to space out your defense. So I think that the Lakers are going to have a more difficult time defending the paint, which, if you've watched a lot of Warriors-Lakers games, the paint's generally unavailable when Anthony Davis is there. So the goal of Post is to just draw Davis out, or to draw Hachimura or any other player that can make it difficult to finish. And I don't think you're going to have to give it some time, but I also think that Post can be a reason during his 15 to maybe 20 minutes why the Warriors aren't as bad of a team at layups. It's a lot harder to make a layup when there are trees, and Post demands that those trees aren't as close to the restricted area.
Where are you at with JJ Redick? You like him?
No, of course not.
Why? Because he went after our man Lucas Alexander?
Well, that's one reason. Also, well, he's just... JJ Redick is one of those guys that strikes me as he thinks he's the smartest man in any room that he steps into.
Yeah.
And there's no room for conversation or discussion.
Possibly.
Yeah, it might be Shanahan. Although Shanahan's legitimately brilliant. JJ Redick has done nothing to me to indicate that he's an innovator than the way Shanahan is.
I think that might come with the years. He's still a young guy.
Well, he shouldn't have got the job in the first place.
Well, you have an issue with a guy who goes from a podcaster to being a head NBA coach?
Well, he's definitely moving on up. I think he's... What do you give me for this? He's Steve Nash as a head coach.
Wow, no. Well, he's in a much better situation, though.
Well, Steve Nash had James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant.
That's true. How come that didn't work out? That's right.
Well, they were close. They were never on the court at the same time. But J.J. Redick he's a bridge. You know, I don't think he's an idiot. I actually did like his podcast, but to me, he's not an NBA head coach. Do you like him?
Went after Lucas? When?
Yeah, director of sports. Called him on a number that we didn't know was his personal phone. And so he ripped Lucas for calling him on his personal phone, said never do this again. He's a jackass.
Yeah, he just comes across that way. But he was like that at Duke. Yeah. He's a total Dookie.
By the way, real quick, before we got to get out of here, Duke has kind of had a makeover. Like, the players that come out of Duke are not as disliked as I feel like all the ones from J.J. Redick's era and prior.
Grayson Allen?
Well, he stinks. He's also, he's dirty, though. That's a little bit different.
Hey, we want to take this call or we want to get out?
No, I think Steve's telling him we got to get out.
Okay.
But, like, Derek Lively, I like him. Zion.
Lively's a good dude.
Zion. R.J. Barrett.
That's right.
Brandon Ingram. Who else?
Zion might be the most atypical Duke guy. You know who's the most atypical for their school? Is Zion Williamson for Duke, and Richard Sherman went to Stanford. Does that make sense?
That's a good call. Yeah, some of the strangest guys to represent a university. Zion does not seem like a Dookie. Well, remember, he was, I think, early in his high school recruitment, I want to say that South Carolina thought they were going to get him.
That's where he's from.
Because he's from Columbus. But Duke came in and swooped him. Who else?
I think the Warriors need to go swoop him.
Zion?
Oh, hell yeah.
What, so he can ride the pine?
Who?
You know where Zion Williamson might be?
San Antonio.
Hot Boys.
What do you mean?
The chicken place I'm going to take you to at All-Star Weekend.
That's where we're going, in the hills?
Well, it's not in the hills. We stop by the way, get some chicken, drop a little hot sauce on there, have a good time.
All right. With that, we got to get out.
All right.
All right, from my man, Evan Giddings, I hope you do better. Get well. My man, just shut it down for a night, all right? Just shut it down. Just turn off your phone.
I'll see you at Chase Center.
Everybody's calling this guy to do this, that, and the other thing. Turn it down, get some tea, get in bed, and, and watch Sopranos for, from season 1 through 16.
We go watch John Wick.
All right. And for my man, Pasta, this is Dan Avone. Until next week, so long, everybody.
You order the code red.
I did the job. Did you order the code red? You're goddamn right I did.
You know what? Let's throw a party this year for the big game.
Hey, we can...